in Kenya when I was about 5 or 6 years old.
Okay.
And we were in this wildlife park in a grey Morris Minor. This rhino started chasing us. There's me and my sister in the back seat.
Right.
It was like something out of Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
We were turning around saying, "Believe it, Dad. Just put your foot down, Dad. We're in a field. Put your foot down." This rhino was chasing us.
One from Mark here in Derby. Went on holiday for our first romantic holiday to Tunisia years ago. Decided to take my girl into a petting zoo. I got a bag of food to feed the animals. A giant goat then went for me, putting its front legs over my shoulders and proceeding to headbutt me over a fence into one of the pens, covering me in the food and making my nose bleed. I got out of the pen, then the goat and all his mates attacked me again, sending me running and screaming like a girl out of the zoo, with my girlfriend rolling with laughter on the floor.
A tarantula climbed up the bottom of the bed on the sheet.
Yeah.
And it walked all the way up. It's eyeball to eyeball.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, what am I going to do when it climbs over my face? But then a miracle happened. It raised its two front legs and waved them around. And then it turned around and walked down the side of the sheet.
Boris Johnson been attacked by an ostrich. The former PM was enjoying a safari trip with his family when the bird leaned into his car and went oi oi and pecked his hand. In footage shared online, he quickly jerked from the ostrich. Don't dirty minds away from the ostrich, and shouted, "Oh, Christ, get hell," before driving off. And so I just set it out there. Have you been attacked by an animal? When I was about 7, says Trevor Jenkins, on holiday in Spain in the 70s, a monkey pulled my long hair. It was long because it was the 70s. I was in floods of tears. And as the family car drove out the car park, an elephant ripped off the car mirror. We got the message. Spanish animals aren't to be trusted. Jeremy, Brittany here from the United States. I was spurred by a rooster in my right foot a few years ago. Spurred? How do you get spurred by a rooster?
One here from Dan in Hampshire. Morning, Mike. Is an Aussie that has been dive-bombed by our version of the Magpie, which is much bigger, every spring.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and welcome to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 6. I'm Mike Graham and we are with you, ladies and gentlemen, on a very auspicious day this morning because all over the front pages are pictures of the Chancellor of the Exchequer in what can only be described as a kind of a greenish trouser suit as she delivered her spending review yesterday. Pictures of her on the front page of the Times, leaving Downing Street before announcing big spending on the NHS, transport and defence. The problem is, with all the big spending, hey, big spender, everybody seems to think of different actual figures. Nobody's got the same number. Some people say 300 billion, some people say 2 trillion, some people say 4 trillion. My question is this, where's all the money coming from? Nobody seems to know. The front page of the Daily Mail, I think, puts it best. A reckless splurge we and our children will be paying off for years. Andrew Neil has written a story in which his opinion is a delusional drivel. This was in a class of its own. So I think a verdict is in on that one. The Telegraph, Reeves hits police and defence to fund the NHS. Chancellor turns on the tax and spend taps in the Times. And the Guardian, of course, trying to be as supportive as ever, says Reeves gambles on renewing Britain to win the trust of voters. All I'd say to that is don't bother. You've already lost the trust of the voters. It's not coming back. And also, we don't really need Britain to be renewed by Labour government people because, actually, we don't like the way you want to change the country. Front page of The Sun goes with Vive la farce. A whole bunch of asylum seekers are on their way here, believe it or not. It's very nice weather today. There'll be a few more thousand coming before the end of the week. Rachel Reeves yesterday said asylum hotels will be open until 2029. And then what's going to happen? I know what's going to happen. They're going to close the asylum hotels and they're going to move everybody who's in the asylum hotels into houses, some of which will just have been built by the new £29 billion that's being spent on all of that. So, generally speaking, we are back at where we were, right at the bottom of the food chain, waiting to try and get some good news from this government. Charlie Rowley's here with me. We'll be going through some of the other stories in the papers, but very much dominated this morning by Rachel Thieves, Richard III, as we like to call her, a complete and utter Game of Thrones, if you like, only we're the ones getting, well, I can't really say that word, can I, this time of the morning, but you know what I mean, it's all coming down on us, basically. This is Mike Graham, this is Morning Glory, let's get it on.
And that's why this project has always been about fixing the foundations of our country.
collapsing the foundations of our country. I mean, Keir Starmer was on overdrive yesterday. He was sending out a tweet about every 3.5 minutes. Most of it was absolute and utter drivel. And also, one thing that I'd like to bring to your attention is Liam Halligan as well, from The Telegraph. He's done an actual table of what the real growth is actually going to be in terms of spending in each department of government. And I tell you what, these figures are nothing like the figures that Rachel Reeves was coming out with. Charlie Rowley's here. Charlie, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
I mean, I don't know what we can say about this thing really yesterday. I mean, I watched it with sort of incredulity as she seemed to try to give us the impression that, one, she knows what she's doing, two, that actually the numbers she was producing were correct, which they weren't, and three, the sort of outlook for the future is all very rosy. Because it clearly isn't, is it?
Well, I think that's absolutely right. And, of course, the number one question that people will be asking this morning, regardless of what those figures are, those spending numbers in each department, is how are we going to pay?
Yeah, right.
And, obviously, all the broadsheets and all the newspapers quite rightly pointing to tax rises in the autumn. This is when she's going to set out...
Well, the I newspaper says they're inevitable.
Well, they've got to be, and they must be, because you can't borrow your way out of a crisis. You can't just spend to get them out of a political hole.
Right.
And the fact is, I think people, look, the British public, they get this. They might understand that you need to spend a bit more, maybe in justice, because of the prison crisis that we've had. That's absolutely fine. But the idea that you just slap on an extra 30 billion for the NHS without any kind of targeting, without any kind of, efficiency, targets that need to be made.
Yeah, I mean, who gets it? I mean, only yesterday, the Times was reporting that the NHS themselves have said that an extra 30 billion literally won't make any difference.
Oh, exactly. Because of the costs of drugs might be going up, because if this government can't get inflation down, because there isn't confidence in the markets, because people aren't spending, because of the national insurance contributions. That was a tax that was introduced last year, a tax that has been slapped on the backbone of our economy. Small and medium-sized businesses, they are having to pay for some of this stuff. But that was a tax last year, a reverse of NI insurance that they and
nobody's got any more money now than they had last year. We had a caller yesterday, a plumber, called in from Bury in Manchester, who said he's looking at his receipts and he's taking in a third less money, and he's making a third less money this year than he was the year before, because people can't afford to hire him.
Yeah, I think that's right. And where are the two biggest spending pots where all this money's going to? It seems to me, it's going to be on these new infrastructure, government infrastructure accommodation, not hotels. So moving people out of hotel accommodation into shiny new apartment blocks.
Yes. But they sort of don't want to say, do they? I mean, apparently Angela Eagle has let it slip somewhere overnight that there will be rooms made in sort of disused tower blocks, which sounds a bit ropey to me, and sort of, and former barracks and that kind of thing. But that's not going to happen, is it? Because what we also know they're doing is Serco and others are actually acquiring loads and loads of properties in towns up and down the country, and paying the landlords 5-year sort of guaranteed leases. So, we know where they're going to go.
Yeah, exactly. And what people will take from it is that, look, if you've come into the country illegally, and by the way, they can say that they're bringing the numbers of people that are in that processing part down, but they're only down because it's easier probably to say yes to somebody to come in to be granted asylum than it is to explain why they've been
part
rejected.
of the explanation was that, obviously we're going to beef up the ability to process the claims. Well, people don't want to hear that. People want to hear the fact that if they've come here illegally, you're going to deport them. We don't want you to processing the claims quicker, because the fact is Britain is full, and most people agree with the fact that we've got too many people here. So don't start processing the claims, start deporting them.
Exactly. And so when you tot up all of these spending decisions, you're going to see, obviously, that spending on new accommodation for people that have come into the country seeking asylum, money going to the NHS, it's going to be soaked up immediately by inflation, drugs, and all the rest of it, and paying down debt that's been accumulated under this government, paying obviously those inflationary prices, because there isn't that confidence in the markets, there isn't the confidence in this Chancellor and this government. There's going to be zero, I think, next to zero growth when the OBR produce their figures again, which means that there isn't an additional pot of money coming into the Treasury, which plays into Rachel Reeves's fiscal rules, which means, shock horror, in the autumn, she'll have to go back to the dispatch box, she'll have to go to Parliament and say, hasn't worked out, I'm now going to tax people even more. And that's notwithstanding the big con, which is this 5% local precept that she's trying to disown, which is basically your local council tax is going up.
It's going to go up, having just gone up.
just gone up.
Because most people's council tax only just went up in April when they started the new financial year.
Exactly. And
mine jumped because I think I was in one of these slightly strange situations where I was paying something like, I should have been paying something like 95 quid a month for a flat in London. But because I'd overpaid, I think, the previous year, I was paying 85. And it suddenly jumped to 125. And I'm going, that's quite a big increase. That's not 5%. That's not even 10%. It's more like sort of 40%. And so it's absolutely ridiculous what's going on. But Liam Halligan's figures are interesting. He's put this tweet out, this was yesterday, average annual real growth in department spending limits, and this is 25-26 to 28-29. And practically the only two that are up significantly is health and defence. Everything else is actually down. HS2 down 9.3%. Transport outside of that down 0.5%. Culture, media and sport down 1.4%. Foreign and Commonwealth Office down 8.3%. Home Office down 1.4%. So actually, all this so-called government spending, she's taking money away. So how can she say she's spending more money? I mean, only a politician could actually get away with this kind of nonsense. You're actually spending less money, but you're making out you're spending more.
Yep. It doesn't add up.
No.
And, when it comes to defence, I think it's right to spend more on defence. I think people have been asking that for a long time. But where they're spending that money...
But again, where are they spending it?
Exactly.
That's the problem.
And I think I think, look, I'd never thought I'd be saying, but, it's fantasy to say that all of a sudden we're going to have these, 12 nuclear submarines floating around and an increase in fighter jets.
Well, we don't. I mean, again, they said they were going to have up to 12, right? But when John Healey was asked the question, well, how many is up to 12? Is it one?
Yes.
Is it 6? Is it half a submarine? I don't know. He didn't know. And when he was asked how much they cost, he didn't know that either.
Exactly.
I mean, extraordinary.
And that doesn't play into, I'm afraid, that will be good for one sector. That will be good, obviously, for the defence industry and for the people that work there. But that doesn't generate the growth and the wealth distribution. The victories.
But also, again, they use these phrases. And by the way, on the submarine front, there's a piece on the front of the Times saying that President Trump's administration is actually threatening to scrap the submarine deal that the US has with the UK and Australia. It's called the AUKUS deal, right? Because they're not very happy about the way the money's distributed through it. So that might be a massive blow to Starmer and his defence capability, because if the Americans aren't playing ball, suddenly, we'll have to come up with even more money. But there's other thing about, we're going to create 10,000 jobs by building all these houses. Well, people were asking me yesterday, well, how are you creating jobs? Because if you're creating jobs for builders, some of the builders might already be working, so you're not actually giving them a new job, you're just giving them a new sort of project, if you like. It's not like you haven't created a job there.
Yeah, I think that's right. And, where are these sites going to be? Is that going to ride roughshod over local people that are already paying now an increase in council
tax? And it's all
tax?
Affordable housing, and an awful lot of it will be going to immigrant families.
Yeah. Exactly, and so it doesn't help hard-working Brits at all. This plays into a government, again, that hasn't got a strategy, that doesn't know what it's doing, that's just coming out with all these words and phrases, throwing them at the wall and hoping it sticks.
Word salad.
Word salad.
Shall we have a look at some clips, because we got an awful lot of them today. Shall we start with Rachel Reeves, I guess? Here she is talking about the end of asylum hotels.
The party opposite left behind a broken system. Billions of pounds of taxpayers' money spent on housing asylum seekers in hotels, leaving people in limbo and shunting the cost of failure onto local communities. We won't let that stand. So I can confirm today that, led by the work of my right honourable friend, the Home Secretary, we will be ending the costly use of hotels to house asylum seekers in this Parliament. Funding that I have provided today, including from the Transformation Fund, will cut the asylum backlog, hear more appeal cases and return people who have no right to be here, saving the taxpayer £1 billion a year.
£1 billion a year? I thought it was £4.7 billion a year to put these people in migrant hotels. And in this Parliament means in 4 years' time, right? So the people that are still coming will still be put in the migrant hotels. They'll still be moving people out with them and putting them into different types of accommodation. So it's not really any news at all, is it?
No, and I think, look, for however much the Rwanda scheme was costing, it was costing a lot, and those flights didn't get off the ground. I think people will probably be looking back in a few years' time thinking, well, hold on, actually, they'd rather have pursued the Rwanda scheme, just, OK...
Well, it was cheaper than keeping them here.
Cheaper than keeping people here, unblock whatever legal mechanism you need to get those flights off the ground, because that meant that anybody that arrived into the UK would be sent to Rwanda, where their processing claim could be taken place. Here, what you've got now is people that can come into the country, they can get this accommodation now in this new souped-up whatever it is, accommodation, then they can apply, then they can be granted asylum, and then they'll be moved on to whether it's council housing, that new affordable
It's like a conveyor
home.
belt of joy for these guys.
Come on
because they
over.
basically come in, they don't have to have any money at all, they don't even have to have a phone, they'll be given a phone, they'll be given money, they'll be given accommodation, they'll be given the right to wander about the streets with some spending money as well. I mean, it's just incredible. The Sun's front page today has got this farcical scene being played out on a dinghy setting sail from the French coast as the French police basically looked on. And the French police now are starting to make a lot of interesting noises about how they can't interfere, because you know how they were supposed to be getting in the water. It was only last week Keir Starmer said they're now going to wade into the water and they're going to arrest people who are trying to leave France. I said at the time, why are they going to do that? Why would they try and stop them leaving? They want them to leave, right? The French police are now saying once they're in the water, they can't do anything because it's too dangerous. So which one of those stories is true? Well, more lies from Starmer.
You're absolutely right. And, you know, on top of, as you say, all of that list of things that you get when you come into the country, what you do get is a nice send-off from France. You know, they'll just wave you
Adios.
off.
Or even au revoir.
Au revoir.
Unless you've got Spanish police there, I don't know.
Well, we'll come to those. I'm sure we'll come to those later.
Yeah, absolutely right. But let's talk about the £280 million Border Security Command. This is another load of old cobblers. Yeah, this is Rachel again.
In contrast, in the budget last year, I announced £150 million to establish the new Border Security Command. And today, to support the integrity of our borders, I can announce that funding will increase with up to £280 million more per year by the end of the spending review for our new Border Security Command.
I mean, Border Security Command, what a joke. I mean, there is no Border Security. What is the Border Security Command? And what's the guy they put in charge of it doing?
Yes.
You know, apart from having conferences around the world. The border isn't secure.
No.
It's literally a joke.
Border Security Command, I mean, is BSC.
BS
this could be the BS Chancellor.
Well, funnily enough, Mel Stride called her the tin foil Chancellor yesterday, which I think might actually stick.
Well, the most hilarious part was obviously quite early on where she was talking about having tackled some of the debts and the liabilities, and I think somebody heckled her that the biggest liability is sitting, you know, at the dispatch box, you know, giving the budget. I mean, she is a liability, obviously, because she's boxed herself in to say that she's not going to raise tax. That's clearly what's going to go and have to happen in the autumn. And I just think it's a mess. You know, these are not the front pages that a Chancellor wants to wake up to, that a government should want to wake up to. It's not bought them any time at all or any credit. And she had the audacity in the brass neck to say to people, OK, now that we're spending more on the NHS, we're covering things like the £3 bus fare extension, so people have that cap. They only pay £3 maximum bus fare and something else. And she said, now Labour MPs have got to go and campaign on that issue and tell people that people are only going to realise that this is what a Labour government delivers if people go and campaign on it. And I think I would be embarrassed knocking on a door to say, good morning, I'm Charlie Reid from the Labour Party.
Well, you'll get that. Remember there was that famous moment during the election campaign when some woman just opened the door and just went, F off.
Yes, it's quite, and that's what
you're going to get. A lot of people as well in the Labour Party concerned about this because they were saying, I was watching John McDonnell last night, who was on another show, talking about how this is basically a return to austerity.
Yes.
Which is what Labour MPs absolutely feared would happen. And she's also tried to sort of assuage them because reform got quite a few mentions yesterday, didn't they, in the Chancellor's speech? Which again, they can't move away from the threat from reform because they're so worried that many of their voters are just going to go for reform now. Yeah,
again, and the brass neck to sort of attack them for what she described as the £80 billion worth of unfunded tax cuts. I think reform will, if they were here, they'd be able to say actually, we've pointed to those spending plans, but also genuine tax cuts which allows growth, which is what the Labour Party have clearly trying to be arguing for. They want to see growth, but they're not going to get under their budget. But £80 billion is a drop in the ocean in comparison to this, spending spree.
Well, let's have a look at Mel Stride because I thought he was quite good yesterday. Actually, have a look at this.
This is the spend now, tax later review. Because the Right Honourable Lady knows she will need to come back here in the autumn with yet more taxes. And a cruel summer of speculation awaits. How can we possibly take this Chancellor seriously after the chaos of the last 12 months?
I think he's not wrong about that. There has been chaos in the last 12 months and the economy's just gone from bad to worse. And Andrew Neil was on Times Radio yesterday. This is even worse for her.
I've never seen a government lose so much support so quickly. And it's not clear that anything the Chancellor had to say is going to change that. And if the Chancellor has to come back in October, as I think she will, with big tax rises because she can't borrow more, and the sums will not add up, if she's got to do that, then I think that's the end of her political career.
So there you go, the end of her political career. I mean, people saying, as she was going into this ridiculous sort of presentation yesterday, that it's kind of do or die for Rachel Reeves, because most people now agree that she has failed miserably in doing the job. She's actually probably going to go down as one of the worst chancellors ever, isn't she? She doesn't seem to have a clue about money. No. Which is a bit worrying.
Well, for the Chancellor,
yeah.
Yes.
I mean, what's your job? I'm Chancellor of the Exchequer. What do you know about money? Nothing at all.
Not very much.
No.
And I think, again, if you're waking up as a Labour MP, backbench Labour MP this morning, and you're crunching those numbers, yes, big spending numbers to get through the next couple of years, but in real terms, some of those departments will then be facing cuts. Those cuts won't cut it in compared to what savings need to be made because of all this to fund for all of this spending. You're then going to be cutting in an area as a Labour MP that you'd be very uncomfortable with. And so if she's got to break up fiscal rules by asking for more tax cuts, if Labour MPs are finding it difficult to back what the government is actually proposing, having gone through the whole chaos of the winter fuel debacle, it's going to be very, very uncomfortable for them for the next couple of years.
But don't worry, because there's some help at hand from the taxman, apparently. I found a piece in the paper this morning. HM Revenue and Customs is not going to stop sending letters out to people. So they won't send you more letters unless it's a tax demand, in which case they'll send it through the post. And that could save them as much as £50 million. Well, which, I mean, you talk about a drop in the ocean. I mean, I don't know how many letters you get from the taxman. I get sort of quite a few. They sort of send me pointless letters saying, don't forget to file your taxes by December, blah, or by April next year. And it's like, well, why are you sending me that? What's the point of that? Yes. And I bet you if they went through every single government department who send out pointless letters, they could probably save even more. But there we are. It's 22 minutes past 6. Charlie Rowley's here. Got a couple of really, really good messages in already. Stuart in Perthshire says, morning, Mike and Charlie. I heard someone yesterday, it might have been Liam Halligan, saying that there's no more money for defence, but they're now rolling intelligence into defence so that it looks like more is being spent. It's just fudging the figures. Absolutely right. Andrew from Thatcher. Richard III has allocated more money to secure our borders, and then they give away one of them to the Spanish. Make this government make sense. Yeah, well, we'll talk about Gibraltar coming up, because it looks as though David Lammy is once again on his reparations tour of the world, trying to sort of save it by giving things back that we belong to and that we should keep. Absolutely ridiculous. This is Talk.
Why on earth he got knighted. And he said that, by the way, that when the king knighted him, I don't know whether this story is true, because, I don't really particularly trust anything that comes out of Sadiq Khan's mouth. But he said that when the king sort of stubbed him on the shoulders, he apologised to Sadiq Khan for this honour taking so long to be bestowed. Now, if the king said that to him, that makes me almost as angry with the king as I am about him always preaching green claptrap.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham. It's coming up to 25 minutes past 6. I'm here with Charlie Rowley. We're looking through the way the papers are covering this spending review from yesterday, and it's not very good news, I'm afraid, for any of us, because it looks as though council tax is going to go up. It looks as though police are not going to get the money they wanted. Ed Miliband appears to have got money that he wanted. But let's have a look at the big story that all of us really care about here at Talk, and most of you think is the most important issue currently affecting the country, and that is, of course, immigration, and particularly illegal immigration. Front page of the Sun today has got Viva la Farce. It's basically a story that says migrants piled onto a dinghy and set sail for the UK yesterday as indifferent French police looked on. The farcical scene played out as Rachel Reeves was vowing to get asylum seekers out of taxpayer-funded hotels by 2029. By the time that happens, of course, we'll have spent £12.6 billion on housing them, for heaven's sake. Everybody knows, really, that you can't just take people out of hotels and deport them all, because that's not what's going to happen. Where are they going to go, though? Here's a clip from Jeremy Carl's show yesterday. He had James Murray on, who's the Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury, so he's one of sort of Rachel Reeves' minions. And Jeremy Carl tried to find out where these asylum seekers and illegal migrants are actually going to go. Have a look.
What is your plan? How are you going to stop the boats? How are you going to... OK, stop. Let me have my point. Answer two really simple questions very simply. Where are these asylum seekers going? It's a simple question. And what's your plan to stop them coming here in the first place? That's what people want, James. Where are they going?
Well, some of them will be sent home if their applications are rejected, and we want to bring down that backlog. That's the first duty, and that's what we've been doing since the election last year. And what we're saying is, for those people who are being processed, they're waiting for a decision to be taken. It is unacceptable to be spending so much money on expensive hotel accommodation.
So where are they going to go? Not the some who get deported. What about the not some who are going to still be here or are not going in hotels? It's not a difficult question, James, with respect. Where are these people going?
I said earlier on in our conversation today that there would have to be alternative accommodation for them.
Alternative accommodation? So free houses then?
Yes.
Yes. I mean, some people can't afford a house. Some people can't even get a rental property because the rental prices have gone through the roof, because the government keeps sort of sucking up all of these rental properties and giving them out for free to asylum-seeking families and illegal migrants.
Yeah.
This is an absolute shambles, isn't it?
Totally. And look, I was on the tube yesterday, and in one of the stations there was a charity organisation there that were raising money for homeless veterans.
Right. Yeah.
And you pass that and you think, where on earth has been the energy or the thought process for people that have actually signed up to give their life to fight for this country, who are homeless and on the streets and in need of accommodation? Where has been the thought process for those people? It's been totally absent. Now, all of a sudden, yes, there is a problem with the number of people coming into this country, but it isn't to say, OK, if you've been processed, or if you're being processed, or if you've got an asylum claim that's been ticked, come right in and have this nice new accommodation, whether that is an ex-defence site, whether it's a disused holiday park, or whether it's a new...
It's still better than a tent in Calais,
It's better than a tent in Calais, but when you've got families who have been in local housing accommodation, council housing or social housing support with families, you know, often overcrowded. You know, these are UK taxpayers, these are people that have worked hard or, you know, trying to get on. We put these people second now. That's the message that's come out from this budget.
And that's what people find so unfair. This from Julian. He says, "Morning, Mike and Charlie. I don't drink, but I feel like I've got a bad hangover this morning from overindulging in Reeves and Starmer. They are a deluded and dangerous pair, and they will go down in history. Surely we can't take another 4 years of this misery." I don't know how we can. I mean, I don't think we're going to get 4 more years of Rachel Reeves, and I'm not even sure we're going to get 4 more years of Keir Starmer. I think they're both out of a job, you know, before the end of this year, it would seem to me.
Well, I think that's right, and I think, look, you know, just as and I know Rachel and Labour Party like to point to the Liz Truss mini budget.
They love it, don't they?
As a way of sort of shielding, and I think Kemi Badenoch was absolutely perfectly right to say they're only bringing that up. You know, she only had 49 days in office, but they're using that as cover. Because
it's not working, though.
It's not working. And look, you know, but just as that happened to be a badly communicated package, you know, because some of the tax cuts she was offering is nowhere near what Rachel Reeves is now sort of
the money was nothing like this kind of spending.
Totally. So there was a lack of confidence, I think, in Liz's communication. But as soon as she got rid of her Chancellor, Liz Truss got rid of Kwasi Kwarteng, of course, Liz soon had to follow. And I can see exactly the same as you just said happening here. Rachel Reeves is, you know, she's got all cover from Number 10 at the minute. You know, they're the political operators. The Prime Minister is backed her no end in all the messaging that she's put out, however chaotic it is. So when she goes, and I think she will, because how embarrassing is it going to be to turn to the country and say, I'm not going to raise your taxes. Now I've spent all this money.
Yeah.
I've realised don't have the money
and I've
to
got
spend,
nothing for it.
And then I'm coming back to ask you, hard-working Brits, for more. The public will reject it, and I think she'll have to go, and, you know, the Prime Minister will have to follow quite soon after that.
I think so. Well, we can only look forward to that day with ever-increasing joy, really, can't we? It's coming up to 6:30. Mel Stride is going to join us. He obviously answered the question yesterday of whether this spending review was worth a fag end, and I think you'll find he doesn't think it is. Neither do I. 6:30.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 6:32. I'm Mike Graham, here with you all the way through until 10 o'clock, of course. There's a Morning Glory podcast that comes out right after the show finishes too. We are sort of examining the papers this morning with what can only be described as a slightly jaundiced eye, because there's only really one paper, I think it's probably The Guardian, that gives any credence whatsoever to Rachel Reeves' spending review from yesterday. Mel Stride, Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer, called her the tin foil Chancellor yesterday, and I think a lot of people would agree with that. Mel, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
I really appreciate you coming on so early in the morning, but, I mean, morning has broken, but so has the government broken this country, hasn't it?
Yes, there's not a lot of sunlight around at the moment, Mike, I'm afraid. Look, what you've got to look at when you look at this spending review is where is the money coming from and can we afford it? And where the money is coming from are these eye-watering taxes that this government is dishing out left, right and centre that has been killing growth, strangling businesses. And also borrowing, of course, borrowing vast amounts of money. Can we afford it? Well, it's looking increasingly dicey to me. We've seen a government that through destroying growth, through stoking inflation, getting interest rates higher than they would otherwise be, adding to this huge mound of national debt, the servicing costs on which, incidentally, are $100 billion a year in interest alone. That's twice what we spend on defence. You're really seeing a government that's losing control of the public finances, I'm afraid. And I think it means in the autumn we could be in for some really, further difficult news with some tax rises. So not a good picture all around, I'm afraid.
It's really not, no. I mean, some numbers seem to not quite add up in many of the pieces of analysis I'm reading this morning, because, you know, is it 4 trillion, is it 2 trillion, is it 300 billion? You know, almost, incomprehensible figures for most people listening to this show and watching it this morning. The Daily Mail calls it a reckless splurge that we and our children will be paying off for years. Andrew Neil's calling it as delusional drivel. This was in a class of its own. I mean, how much damage is being done to the economy? You say in the autumn we might have to be charged for taxes to pay for it all, but between now and then, how much damage it's done to our reputation, to the economy?
Yeah, well, a huge amount, Mike, because the problem is, because we're in this situation where everything is now so precarious because of all this spending splurge and taxing that's going on, of course, there's a lot of uncertainty. So what businesses need to know, for example, and what people up and down the country need to know are they about to be hit with a wave of additional Rachel Reeves taxes in the autumn or not? And living in that kind of cruel summer that we're going to go through in that respect is deeply scarring for our economy, I'm afraid.
Yeah. I mean, I spoke to a plumber yesterday who was up in Bury in Manchester, who called into the show, and he said that his receipts for this year, since Labour government have been in, are down 33%. He said he's lost a third of his business because people simply can't afford to hire him to do the jobs that, you know, the previous year they were asking him to do.
I know, this is exactly what happens. You look at those national insurance increases, for instance, you know, that's £25 billion of additional taxes on businesses. That's destroying jobs, it's depressing wages, living standards, it's stoking inflation. These are the wrong choices that this government made right from the start. And you'll remember, Mike, when they got into office, they talked down the economy. They just dribbled on about how everything was disastrous and terrible inheritance and so on. And not surprisingly, that dampened the animal spirits in the economy, and that's very difficult. And what the crying shame is, this is a country bursting with potential. People that do want to get out there and make a difference and set up businesses and, go and create wealth and create jobs and, end up paying, yes, a fair share of taxes to fund public services. But all that is just being dampened by the approach that this profligate government is taking.
Well, yeah, and this morning in the Times, Paul Johnson, head of the Institute for Fiscal Studies, the IFS, has basically said that all of her numbers are not only wrong, but they're politically kind of skewed, if you like. You know, she's using some numbers that would have been suggestions from a Tory government if you'd won the election. She's using Tory figures when she feels like it, and then not using other Tory figures when she doesn't feel like it. So there's a lot of untruths going on here as well, it seems to me.
Yeah, well, a lot of this investment, Mike, that she's trumpeting at the moment, some of it was baked in to the situation that we were in when we were in government. So a lot of these schemes, and they were fully funded and ready to go in that sense under the last government. So she's done some of that. But what she can't get away from fundamentally is a huge spending splurge, and somebody's got to pay for that, and it's being paid for in higher taxes, which is self-defeating, because what it's doing is slowing the economy down. If you can get the economy growing, then the pie is bigger. Okay, if the economy slows down because you're layering up the taxes, then you're running into problems. And this money is going to have to be paid back at some point, all this borrowing. And this is the point about our children and our grandchildren. We are saddling ourselves with ever higher debts, and it will have to be repaid in the end. So I'm afraid they're going in completely the wrong direction.
Yeah. And, I mean, just while I've got you on, can I ask you about the whole situation with Gibraltar? We discovered yesterday morning that David Lammy, unbeknownst to most of us, had flown out to Gibraltar the night before the spending review, and he appears to be starting the process, anyway, of sort of giving Gibraltar back to Spain.
Well, I've got to see, and we've got to look very closely at the details of that, Mike, and exactly what it means. It does appear that this will mean Spanish officials at the airport there and various things like that, which we need to think very, very carefully about. Look, Gibraltar has to maintain its sovereignty. That is the absolute bottom line here. We'll be looking at that very carefully. But you know what? The track record of this government in this sort of area is not very good. You think of the Chagos Islands, where we've effectively, we're paying for the privilege of having something that we've had ourselves for a very long time in the most mind-numbing deal. One thing I said in my response to Rachel Reeves yesterday in the House of Commons was that when it comes to tax, the only tax cut that she has ever delivered is to the people of Mauritius. Because the money we're paying for the Chagos Islands, that government in Mauritius has said will be passed on by way of tax cuts for people in Mauritius.
I know, it's absolutely incredible.
Mad.
It's absolutely incredible. We reported on this yesterday. 81% of people working in Mauritius will pay no income tax at all as a direct result of that deal. It's quite staggering, isn't it?
Yeah, thanks to thanks to Rachel Reeves.
Yeah.
I mean, it beggars belief, Mike.
It does, it really does. People are so frustrated. They really want something to give them encouragement that this bleeding awful government will not be around for very much longer. But, you know, I can't give them anything like that. Can you at least tell us that you think Rachel Reeves and possibly even Keir Starmer won't last this full term?
Well, we're gonna have to see there. But put it this way: if it was based on taking the right decisions, they wouldn't have lasted as long as they have. It's been a fiasco right from the start. And you think about what they told people before they got elected. You know, they weren't going to put taxes up. You know, they weren't going to, you know, borrow lots of money. They're going to stick to the fiscal rules. She was going to be the Iron Chancellor. Well, it didn't take very long for all that to unravel. And I'm afraid they've reverted to type. It's the same old Labour. Borrowing and taxing and spending like it's going out of fashion, and all the rest of us paying the price, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I'm afraid so. Mel Stride, great to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Mel Stride, Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer. Charlie Rowley's here with me. I mean, I thought, as I said, that his response to the spending review yesterday by Rachel Reeves was really good. Because it's not difficult to pick holes in it at the end of the day. You know, as you said, the only benefits that are being felt from anything that this Labour government's doing, financially, fiscally, are in Mauritius. If you happen to live there, then you're happy as Larry. You know, they'll vote for them again.
Yeah, exactly. I thought that was a good line from Mel to say that the only people getting a tax cut are the people of Mauritius on this terrible deal that we've giving away the Chagos Islands. But it's an opportunity for the Tories. Obviously got a drumming at the last election. But, you know, to revert back to what should be their strengths, as they've always tried to position themselves as the party of fiscal responsibility, of economic credibility. You know, the way that Mel's talking and the way in which, you know, he's attacking the government and hopefully putting forward an alternative will hopefully make viewers look at them again. I think that's what the Tories will want. Certainly they'll want to see anyway.
I mean, it's hard to imagine that this lot that got elected with such a big majority, even though we all know that not everybody actually voted, and quite a small number, it's quite a thin majority, even though it's a big one, if you like. It's quite remarkable how quickly they've become so unpopular. And it's hard to imagine them ever being re-elected again at this point, isn't it?
I think that's absolutely right, because there's no political direction. There's no, I think, a sense of direction. I don't think Keir Starmer has a plan. I don't think he really knows what he wants to do with the country. He's just sort of come in. He still acts like a lawyer, where it's an issue-by-issue basis what comes across his desk. He thinks just making decisions is being a good Prime Minister. Well,
I've got this image of him in kind of waking up in the morning and walking downstairs and just getting punched every time he sort of turns around. You know, almost as though, you know, there's yet another sort of blow coming his way, because he's reacting more than he's actually making the rules, isn't he? He's just reacting to things that are happening around him. And some of his tweets yesterday were just outlandishly ridiculous and just generally speaking untrue.
Yeah, and seem to be an organisation that seems to be in some sort of campaign mode. Rather, you know, campaigning is very, very different to governing. And I agree. I think he walks down the stairs from the Downing Street flat and looks around and says, you know, what are we doing today? Or what should we do? What would you like me to do today? Because he isn't in charge.
What's today's disaster that we have to deal with in the short term? Because we're looking at sort of situations up and down the country. I mean, last night there were riots in Salford, disturbances at the very least, if you don't say riots, and people have predicted this sort of summer of discontent, you know, hot weather, you know, a lot of people unemployed, a lot of people unhappy, a lot of people without any money in their pockets. The police are saying they haven't got enough money to boost their numbers, so they're going to be struggling. The police are obviously not particularly well liked in lots of parts of the country, and you just think to yourself, you know, we've got probably quite a difficult few months ahead.
I think we do. I think that's absolutely right. I think the economic conditions for the British people are terrible. The sense of direction and purpose.
There's no jobs for people to do.
No jobs. Unemployment is down. I think there's 276,000 odd people that were out of work compared to when Labour government came in.
Since Labour got in,
So employment is up, taxes are up, debt is up, borrowing is up. The number of people coming into the country illegally is up. And spending is up. All for the wrong priorities and all in the wrong places. So people will be tetchy. People will be, I think, given the chance, wanting to express that dissatisfaction, and that can turn into scenes that nobody wants to see. But again, knowing that the police are stretched, it could happen.
And it's happening in Northern Ireland again overnight as well, where a community centre was burned down because of the problems that are going on there with the two young men, the two teenagers who have been arrested and charged for a sexual assault, who are apparently Romanian, and this Romanian and lots of Romanian people apparently in Northern Ireland, which I didn't know, where they were all put in this community centre, and it was burned down last night. You know, so things are really like a powder keg. Here, one from Sean in Gloucester says, "Morning, Mike. I'm absolutely furious and getting more mad every day with this incompetent government. So Keith Stalin and Richard III's ideology is driving the country into the ground. They will bankrupt us, give all of our territories and assets away, and leave us with nothing. We really do need to get these morons out. They've run out of our money." And Mark in Caterham says, "Morning, Mike. Saying hotels will be open until 2029 is basically a welcome message for the gangs to keep shipping people over for another few years. She's like a cheap tour operator offering all-inclusive trips here." That's a good point. I mean, if you're one of the gang masters, you're going to go, "Oh, this is great news." You know, Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor of the Exchequer in Britain, says that, you know, they can all stay in the migrant hotels until 2029. Yeah. So have a few more thousand people today.
Yeah. Where's the deterrent in that?
Yeah.
You know, what's to stop people?
You
why
know,
would you
why
not?
Don't you just order your breakfast while you're at it? You know, what would you like? You know, full English or about something continental, perhaps? Yes. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's 6:45. Back after this.
Chances of her having cleared out the asylum hotels and all the houses of multiple occupation that should be occupied by British citizens rather than illegal migrants, I think is 1 in a million, frankly. But look, I wish them well. Obviously, the whole British people would like them to get a grip of the illegal migrant crisis. She talked, I mean, I did have to laugh in the chamber when she said they were getting a grip of borders. They talked about extra hundreds of millions spending on border security command. That basically means hundreds of millions more cash to the French.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham, 6:48. This one from Elle in Staffordshire. The immigration problem is increasingly making us angry because they are continuing to ignore the will of the people. They need to look at what's going on in Northern Ireland and take it as a warning, she says. Well, yeah, certainly things are hotting up over there. So a few other stories to talk about. Charlie Rowley's here as well. Just before we move away from Keir Starmer, though, a fascinating sort of insight into what is going on in the mind of the Prime Minister. He sent this out last night. In the budget last year, my government made the tough but fair decision to apply VAT to private schools. The Tories opposed it, Reform opposed it. Today, because of that choice, we have announced the largest investment in affordable housing in a generation. Well, that's not true. They didn't make 29 billion from the VAT from schools, did they? And Julian Jessup, who's an economist that I think a lot of people respect, I certainly do, he actually put this out on top of it. Who writes this crap? What's VAT on school fees supposed to fund more teachers got to do with spending on affordable housing? Labour's social media output is clearly being managed by an economically illiterate child.
Yep.
And that's true.
Absolutely, and you'll probably find, if somebody digs a bit deeper, that they've spent that money over and over again in different ways in different departments.
Well, they said it was for 6,500 teachers. Now they're saying it's for, millions and millions of houses.
Well,
we can't both be true,
Can't both be true, exactly.
No,
so.
exactly right. A couple of stories to go to which have nothing to do with politics, thankfully. And this one, I've always known this. The Times have got it on the front of their paper, but also running into page 12. And it's all about hybrid working and sort of, blended working that people do. And surprise, surprise, it turns out that a study shows the most highly educated and highly paid are more likely to be hybrid working than younger and older workers and those in more deprived areas. I think we've always known this, haven't we? Because the people who tell you how great it is to work from home, generally speaking, of quite nice little jobs that they can sit there with a laptop doing.
Yeah, exactly. And, a lot of those workers might be people with sort of childcare, and so they manage a bit of childcare at home as well as work and all the rest of it. But you're right, it does smack in the face of another two-tier kind of Britain,
totally.
Where you've got...
because they sit there at home, and I always say this, and people who love working from home always have a go at me saying, yeah, but we really like it, and it's really good, and we're much more productive. Yeah, but the people that are bringing you all the stuff, they're not working from home. The people that you're ordering your deliveries from are all having to get in a van and drive them.
Yeah, exactly. Truck drivers, haulage firms, plumbers, people that you rely on, day in, day out, they don't get the opportunity.
No.
So, and they would tend to be lower paid than someone that, yes, it's on a nice salary that can, sit at a desk and do whatever they do. So I think it is, again, probably another reason why there is, again, this feel of a two-tier Britain and will increase tensions, even more, particularly if people who are those hard-working people that might be on a lower wage, that might be in an area of social deprivation, and still they're seeing their hard-working taxpayer money go on all the stuff that we've been talking about.
And the people who are really suffering from, say, for example, yet another council tax increase will be those kinds of people. It won't be the people who don't have jobs because they get it paid for. It will be the people who do have a job, but it's not a particularly well-paid job, and with everything that they're paying for, they just haven't got any spare money.
Yeah, exactly. And they won't see it, and they'll wonder, again, under a Labour government, a government that traditionally has told us all time and time again that it's there to look after, the working classes or people on the lowest incomes, and it just absolutely isn't.
No, and of course we'll see loads of people working from home this week, won't we, because the hot weather's coming, and so it will be, I wonder if I might just not bother coming in today because I'm just going to lie in the garden and pretend I'm doing a load of work. Apparently it's going to be 30 degrees tomorrow in the southeast, in the east of England, in the Midlands as well, so it's not just a London-centric figure, so 30 degrees centigrade, this is rather warm.
Well, yes, and being a Friday as well, I should imagine, lots of people working at home.
The weekend will start today, I suspect.
Yes, I think there's a name for people that work on Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday.
There is. It's an acronym,
It's an acronym, I think, yes.
Absolutely right. What about this in the Daily Mail? Tall story, no, short man syndrome is actually a thing. Apparently, according to a study, taller men are rated as more desirable and formidable as romantic partners and rivals, respectively, than shorter ones. So it says shorter men are, in fact, likely to display envy, jealousy and competitiveness rather than their taller counterparts. I mean, obviously, it's a massive generalisation.
Yes.
But, I mean, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Sadiq Khan.
Yeah, well, yes.
Smallest man in London, and... I don't know.
Making up for
not being very tall.
Lack of talents in the mayoral department, absolutely, because he's someone that wasn't happy with the spending review, and I know I don't have to keep going back to, but someone that campaigned, I think, to say, vote for a Labour mayor because they can work with the Labour government. Why don't you actually, instead of bemoaning that you're not getting handouts from the Treasury, I know everyone else seems to have had a handout, but he seems to have been missed. Why don't you actually do your own figures and do your own sums and actually fund your own policing in London? Why don't you actually sort of
maybe spend a bit less money on transport for London?
Exactly, and your own PR. People, and you're ballooning your own office and actually spend it on hard work.
Yeah, hasn't he got about 50 people working for him or something like that? Short man syndrome was first identified back in 1926 by the Austrian psychoanalyst Alfred Adler. Apparently, the condition is also known as the Napoleon complex. Well, he's definitely got that.
Well, there you go. Well, absolutely.
Elsewhere, in more kind of serious news, American embassies in the Middle East are preparing to send home non-essential staff and families, to heighten risks in the region. Apparently, there's a lot of what they call chatter on the sort of intelligence networks that there might be something about to happen, whether it be involving Iran or something coming from Iran, or Iran attacking someone or somebody attacking Iran, Israel maybe, I don't know, but there's clearly some concern that basically the embassy in Baghdad is planning an ordered evacuation, withdrawing non-essential staff. Facilities in Bahrain and Kuwait are also to send home family members. These are American embassies, of course.
Yeah, I think that's right. And when you see this kind of move, telling people, non-essential staff, that actually you should be, returned, you should leave.
Yeah.
That doesn't send any kind of positive signal,
does
it?
Really, does it? No.
So it is quite worrying. Previous talk on the back of whether the US would be able to sign a nuclear deal with Iran. Iran does have nuclear power, obviously. Not something that I think the West would really want, but having a deal might be able to contain them in some way.
Yeah.
Obviously, Iran accused of helping support and train those terrorist organisations like Hezbollah, like the Houthis, that obviously took over that Red Sea, shipping lanes early on in the sea that actually went on to attack UK vessels, and obviously, a growing threat. We always lump Iran with Russia and China when we're talking about threats to the UK. So obviously something is happening in that particular area. And of course, as you said, with Israel, the tensions there. It is worrying, as I say, when you have to send people home from that area that are working in US embassies or embassies in that region.
Yeah, exactly right. I wonder what David Lammy's got to say about it. I mean, he's too busy giving away Gibraltar, I suppose, to actually do any real work.
Well, quite well. It wouldn't be surprised if he apologises to them, because we seem to be, everything seems to be our fault. Nothing to do with Europe. If we're talking about Gibraltar, and if we're talking about because of some would argue because of Brexit, that means that there's free. Well, no, that was a UK sovereign decision.
Yeah.
If the Spanish want to still access, and because there's a lot of trade obviously between Spain and Gibraltar, but if they want better access into Gibraltar and better access into what is a UK overseas territory, then they're going to have to shift their moves and their laws about.
But this is the thing, Lammy once again rolling over to the will of the European Union and to the Spanish, and people who live in Gibraltar want to be British, and they've said it. There was a referendum in which they voted to say they wanted to be British, so it's not a question of whether they want ease of movement, it's a question of sovereign property, which is what we have.
Exactly.
In fact, let's get a look at David Lammy on Gibraltar. Let's see what he says.
You provide an update on Iran. We're hearing reports that U.S. personnel are being moved out of the region within striking distance.
It's got to be a negotiated deal where you as Chief Minister, on behalf of the people of business in Gibraltar, feel protected, know that you are sovereign, and that those frictions that have come about as a result of the UK leaving the European are settled, are certain.
I think that's the key. I've been at the table with you, I've been at the table with the previous administration. We've been doing this deal together. It's a deal that's designed to protect everything that people of Gibraltar need protected, what's going to work for the people in the region, the 15,000 that come across every day. And I think that synergy of the government of Gibraltar and the government of the United Kingdom working together and trying to find a partnership with the UK and Spain to make this work and endure, I think it's worked perfectly. And thank you for all the efforts you've put in since you were elected.
We've tried. I always said nothing about Gibraltar without Gibraltar. I hope we've lived up to that. Thank you.
Deary me. What's all with the piano music going on in the background? This is all love-in between David Lammy and this bloke from Gibraltar, who seems to think he speaks for the people of Gibraltar. They've already got border, but now they want a different border.
Yeah, and that border involves Spanish officials being on, the Gibraltar side of things to potentially check, or refuse Brits coming from the UK, our island, into Gibraltar. I mean, the naivety.
I know.
I mean, that's what just screams at me from watching that video. Two men sort of saying, oh, how wonderful this is, and we've got a good deal, and how peaceful it's all going to be.
And we've all worked together so well to get this deal that nobody actually wants.
Exactly, and I don't need to remind people that Spain has been in the past quite aggressive to try and reclaim Gibraltar. It's at the European Union table and try and flex its muscles. I think if you are a Gibraltar who obviously, as you say, through a referendum wants to remain under British law and territory, that would be very alarming. I think seeing a Foreign Secretary just turn up in the dead of night, by the way, a day before the spending review, to then slip out this announcement at the same time to try and dumb it down as if nothing to see here. No one will notice.
Oh yeah, it won't really make any difference. It'll just make it easier to travel between the two places. Absolute madness. Also, the Spanish haven't exactly been very friendly to people who've got homes in Spain. They could have made it easier for them to spend more time there, but instead they've gone with the same French thing of 90-day rule and all this kind of stuff. And when they're not doing that, they're out demonstrating about tourism. Saying we don't want you here. So, you know, why are we helping them? I don't understand.
Exactly.
Anyway, listen, Charlie Rowley, very good to see you.
Good morning.
It's coming up to just after 6:59. Coming up in the new hour, we're going to be talking some more about Rachel Reeves, about the fallout from this ridiculous spending review, about where is the money actually coming from, and also where is it actually going to be spent. And we'll be asking the question as well about the broken borders of this country. The Sun's campaign rides high today because they've got yet another story on the front page of how it is possible for so many people to come here illegally. The French aren't stopping anybody. The boats are still coming. The weather is set fair. We are in a pretty bad place, ladies and gentlemen. We'll talk to you after the news. We've been talking this morning about a new theme park which is going to be built. The Universal Studios apparently going to build it in Bedfordshire. We've been asking many of you to give us some ideas for theme parks. Alison in South Wales says in the new theme park at 5 p.m. every day they could have the PIP parade. All the people driving their brand new Motability cars.
Instead of the water rapids, you can have a road you go down that's full of potholes in a car with bad suspension and flat tyres. I don't know why they're bothering building a theme park in this country. They're going right, no one will be able to afford to go to it anyway.
How about the Rachel Reeves ride, says Terry in Birmingham. You go round and round and vanish up your own deficit. It's the HS2 ride. It travels at high speed for 10 feet, where everyone gets off and into the replacement bus ride. Tickets are £50 if bought 5 months in advance, or £1,000 on the day.
There's a strong rumour going around that Rachel Reeves is going to have a kissing booth at this theme park. So what I do, mate, I shove a £5 in a pot and you can go in and fill your boots.
Thank you very much indeed. Very generous of you. One from G, who says fast-track entry to every ride for illegals, plus a free night stay in the park's hotel and free food. New theme park bumper cars will have to pay a congestion charge, and the funhouse isn't built yet, despite Angela Rayner's pledge to build houses. And what about Ghost Train doesn't move because the driver's on strike? Have a good day. This is brilliant for the theme park. How about grow your own cannabis farm? Yeah, that's a good one. An Ethiopian safari park narrated by Angela Rayner, says Gary in Durham. How about that? This sums up the Labour Party to me. The one idea they have to improve growth for the economy is to basically have a bloody big fun fair. It's the type of idea primary school children would pitch, given 10 minutes to come up with something. Well, it turns out, Matt, in Royston, that it's not even their idea. But they're now trying to claim it's their idea, even though it was actually the Tories.
They have done brilliantly on breakfast, but you know on Drive you've done brilliantly as well. Downhill slide rides surrounded by ULEZ cameras so that people are fined on exit. Love it. You could have a Birmingham-themed Whack the Rat stall. If you whack the rat, you can have your bin emptied for free. On the Labour theme park, a house of mirrors where they're all boarded up because they can't bear to look themselves in the eye.
I've got a great one for you, mate.
This is for the is this for the Universal theme park run by Labour?
Yeah, moat right around the park.
Yeah.
With loads of dinghies. Call it a channel and say anyone who can break in, all is free.
Imagine the Scouts to say you can break into a theme park for free.
Hi, Jeremy. Hey, it's simple. You've got the Labour
across the UK on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Coming up to 3 minutes past 7. I'm Mike Graham with you, of course, all the way through until 10 o'clock. We awake this morning to an awful lot of bad news on the front pages of the newspapers. Reeves hits police and defence to fund the NHS, is what it says on the front page of the Daily Telegraph. The Mail says a reckless splurge we and our children will be paying off for years. Andrew Neil, the broadcaster and former editor of the Sunday Times, says this in his column as delusional drivel. This was in a class of its own. Absolutely extraordinary stuff. Front page of the I newspaper, tax rises are now inevitable to pay for Reeves' £2 trillion spending spree. Economists say the Chancellor will have no choice but to raise taxes in the autumn budget after announcing big boosts to the NHS and defence. The question we've been asking this morning is, where is the money coming from? How exactly are they going to spend it? And when are they going to stop lying? Quite frankly, that is really the major senior problem with this particular government. And let's have a listen to what you've been saying about Rachel Reeves.
Morning, Mike. I'm absolutely aghast at how Rachel Reeves can stand there and say that they have actually fixed the economy.
So she's just going to borrow more and keep borrowing and make the deficit even more enormous than it already is.
They've estimated, Mike, that they're going to be creating 17 billion new jobs for the UK.
Who are these new homes for, Mike? Because it won't be affordable by British people. They'll just be given to all the Tom, Dick and Harrys who get off boats and come into this country and get put in a nice hotel before given a nice cosy house.
As if things can't get any worse.
Well, you think things can't get any worse? We've got some breaking news for you. The UK economy shrank by 0.3% in April, according to the Office for National Statistics. 0.3%. No doubt some economists will say, oh, well, it's not as bad as it could be. Well, the problem is everything is shrinking before our very eyes. The only thing that's not shrinking is the number of lies being told by Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, and by Rachel Reeves, who came out with a complete and utter tissue of balderdash yesterday, if that can be a thing. Nobody believes it. Nobody's buying it. Our council taxes are going up at the very least, and that's for starters. Coming up, we've got James Price to talk to. We'll find out what he makes of it all. We'll be talking as well about the front page of The Sun, because we've got a situation now where it's basically a free-for-all. Anybody can come to this country. It looks as though for the foreseeable future you'll be put into a migrant hotel, and from that point on, thanks to the broken borders that we have in this country, I'm afraid you will then be moved into a home. You'll have a house, and it'll all be for free. So why on earth would they stop coming? They just won't, will they? 0344 499 1000 is the number. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Lots of you getting in touch this morning. Lots of you not very happy at all with the way that this government is running the country into the ground and into the sea, because, as we have said, it is absolutely and utterly now, without any shadow of a doubt, true to say that our borders are absolutely and utterly broken. Yeah, we've got a big piece of The Sun today. Vive la farce, it says. Migrant spending shambles. Migrants piled onto a dinghy and set sail for the UK yesterday as indifferent French police looked on. The farcical scene played out as Rachel Reeves was vowing to get asylum seekers out of taxpayer-funded hotels by 2029, by which time we'll have spent £12.6 billion on them. Unbelievable. Steve says this in Yorkshire. Morning, Mike. I run a small business and have done so for the last 17 years. And next year, my corporation tax bill will be 75% less than it is this year because Rachel Reeves has killed my business due to the downturn in the economy and the national insurance increases. I can't take any more tax rises. I'll just shut my business. I can't wait to leave the UK. And that, I'm afraid, is a very, unfortunately, regular type of message that I'm getting now. People who are running businesses are finding it harder and harder to make any money because they're getting taxed absolutely to hell, into oblivion. James Price is here, former government minister. James, very good morning to you.
Well, I want to say it's a good morning back to you, my friend, but given Rachel Reeves's, I think at this point, criminal mismanagement of things, I'm not sure what can be good at all anymore.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, not one word of what she said yesterday really rings true. Not one projection is going to come to fruition. Not anything that she predicts will happen. And even the spending plans that they've announced are so woolly that it's not clear what actually is going to happen. You know, this idea that they're going to build loads and loads of houses, millions and millions of houses, don't believe it. It's not going to happen. Nobody in the building trade thinks it's going to happen. The fact that they're going to continue to house migrants in hotels up until 2029, and then, as we found out from Jeremy Kyle yesterday, nobody knows what's going to happen to them after that. Where are they going?
Yeah, I mean, where to even begin with any of this? As you just said just now, even before all of this, the economy has shrunk, and that's because massive taxes, as you said there again, that poor bloke who said he's just going to shut his business, that's going to happen all over the place. And when taxes go up and when the Labour Party are in charge, taxes always go up and up and up. You'll see more economic activity, people running their businesses going down. And then what happens? Well, you've got to put taxes up on everybody who's left. And then what happens? More businesses shut. And you get these kind of destructive cycles. Funnily enough, today, the 12th of June, has been calculated by the Adam Smith Institute as Tax Freedom Day. So this is the point in the year at which we finally have paid off the taxes we've got to pay for the government, and for the rest of the year we're working for ourselves. In June. This is absolutely extraordinary. And we've also worked out that even before this horrendous announcement, by the end of Labour's term in office, it will be the highest tax burden that this country has ever had, including through 2 world wars and the 20-year struggle against Napoleon that brought in income tax in the first place. That's before Reeves's massive unfunded promises here that are going to spook the markets, they're going to mean more people shut their business, more people fleeing abroad and all the rest of it. This is an absolute economic doom spiral. It's going to doom the NHS, it's going to doom the education service, it's going to doom the defence of this island. At the moment, it's going to doom the whole country.
It really is, and the problem is that how far down the sort of the plug hole should we go before somebody actually puts a stopper in and says, hang on a minute, you know, we need to stop this in its tracks. Let's have a look at quickly what happened yesterday in Prime Minister's Questions. Kemi Badenoch and Keir Starmer had a bit of a back and forth on the economy.
Since Labour took office, Mr. Speaker, inflation has nearly doubled, growth has halved, and unemployment has surged. Is this what the Prime Minister meant when he tweeted that the economy is improving?
Yes. Minister. Mr. Speaker, since the general election, 500,000 more people are in work. And I know she doesn't mention that. She's fixated on talking Britain down. We're investing in the future. Mr. Speaker, even in the last 2 weeks, the Strategic Defence Review, 30,000 new jobs building submarines. Yesterday, the sizable announcement, 10,000 new jobs. Tens of thousands of construction jobs building the social and affordable housing that was announced this morning. That's the difference that Labour makes in government.
Mr. Speaker, he must be talking about a different economy. All of us in this House heard about unemployment increasing. Unemployment has increased every month since Labour took office.
And that's, again, proof that there's just so much disingenuity about this Prime Minister, because he's talking about 10,000 jobs created for Sizewell C. Well, where are they? You know, what jobs? You know, it's nonsense. He talks about 30,000 jobs being created to build submarines up in Barrow-in-Furness and elsewhere. Where are those jobs coming from? I mean, it's just you can't just say that and make out that it's true.
No. Keir Starmer is a liar. Rachel Reeves is a liar. And frankly, at this point, everybody in that Labour front bench are liars. I'm just going to come out and say it, because I think that the hour is too late in this country right now not to say it. Things are that bad. And look, you mentioned some of the callers there. I've got it with a lot of my friends as well, of people just deciding to up sticks and leave. And again, that will speed on this kind of decline. And when he says, oh, you're talking Britain down, no, people can see that the economic prospects are very poor. That means that crime will also go up, and crime is going up massively, especially since Labour came in. Well, that means it's less safe. You're less able to speak out and say the truth of what's happening, whether it's on Islamist terrorism, or probably increasingly they'll put some bill in that will make it illegal to talk Britain down. And so you're going to be less safe, less rich, less free, all because these morons don't understand some quite simple rules about how the economy works and about how human beings work. And you're not going to have a job either at this rate, because, as Kemi Badenoch rightly said, unemployment has gone up every single month since Labour have been in office. And if that happens, what can you do? You've got no freedom. You go reliant on the state. And then what do? That's right, they put the taxes up again. Because somebody with a hammer, everything is a nail. And to these morons who understand nothing other than tax rises and assume that if you've earned something, nope, sorry, that's for the state, we're going to take it off you. This is the socialist mindset, the communist mindset at this point. I think there's no difference between the two.
No.
And we need to get these people out of office before they destroy the country beyond the point of no return.
Exactly right. Because at the end of the day, the tax take becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. As you say, more and more people move away, more and more people shut their businesses, more and more people make less money, so the tax take is less. And in the end, they run out of people to tax, and they run out of money. And that's where we're going, right?
Yeah, well, as Margaret Thatcher said, one of the problems with socialism is that eventually you do run out of other people's money. Right? You've got countries like the United Arab Emirates, or Dubai and Abu Dhabi, that have active kind of concierge services highlighting and targeting wealthy people. We're talking not just people who are wealthy because they've got a home and therefore are millionaires. We're talking cash, liquid millionaires saying, hey, come to Dubai. will not tax you for a start. There are almost no taxes there. There's no crime there, and you can grow your business, you can raise your family, the schools are getting better all the time, all these sorts of things. Ditto the United States, you might see a few, dodgy bits happening in Los Angeles right now, but if Donald Trump were to open up a kind of a special relationship green card or something, how talent would flood away from there, and then we would be so screwed, because those of us who are left will have, as you say, an even higher burden. And these guys are pathologically incapable of understanding that the framework that they see the world through is just wrong. And all they're going to do is go, oh, well, we'll just put more taxes up because it must be the evil, greedy, rich people. That's what we'll do. But then it used to be, one more thing for the Labour Party, it used to be at least, that they would they had an idea in their head that they would take from the rich to give to the poor, right? They thought Robin Hood. Actually, what they did was take from everybody and give it to the state. But at least then the state had some kind of pretension that once you'd swilled the money around and wasted loads of it, that it would go on the neediest people. Who is it going on now? It's going on a bunch of foreign fighting age men who are coming flooding over in small boats, sniffing around primary schools, who've got no love for our country whatsoever, and who we see in the case of at least the Iranian ones we arrested recently, and probably a lot more. We're now being taxed to pay these people to sit in our hotels to plot terror attacks against us. I feel like I've taken crazy pills listening to this, but it's true.
Well, listen, have a look at Jeremy Kyle from yesterday. He was questioning exactly what was going to happen to all of these migrants who apparently in 2029 will no longer be staying in migrant hotels. He had Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury, James Murray, on. Check this out.
What is your plan? How are you going to stop the boats? How are you going to... OK, stop. Let me have my point. Answer two really simple questions very simply. Where are these asylum seekers going? It's a simple question. And what's your plan to stop them coming here in the first place? That's what people want, James. Where are they going?
Well, some of them will be sent home if their applications are rejected, and we want to bring down that backlog. That's the first duty, and that's what we've been doing since the election last year. And what we're saying is, for those people who are being processed, they're waiting for a decision to be taken. It is unacceptable to be spending so much money on expensive hotel accommodation.
So where are they going to go? Not the some who get deported. What about the not some who are going to still be here or are not going in hotels? It's not a difficult question, James, with respect. Where are these people going?
I said earlier on in our conversation today that there would have to be alternative accommodation for them.
Yeah, so there will be alternative accommodation. They can't bring themselves to say we're going to give them free houses, but that's what's happening, isn't it?
No, well, first point, everybody who's watching this on the live stream would look at that chap and think, God, that is a strong, proud leader that I would definitely follow into battle, don't you think? I mean, where are we finding these sorts of people? This is the guy we're supposed to be listening to on how to secure our borders. He doesn't look like he could lock his own front door. And as you say, this is just complete cobblers. This idea, well, where are they going to go? I'm not going to say. Where are they going to go? I'm not going to say. How do you know a politician is lying? Their lips are moving, right? They're either going to get put into social housing, which is going to get increased costs for everybody else. We've already seen huge numbers of people who are foreigners in this country already receiving social housing. And by the way, it's not a very pleasant thing to do necessarily, but you can actually break it down by nationality.
Yes.
And something like 75% of Somalians, for example, in this country live in social housing. Well, how can they be contributing to this country? What are they doing this for? You've got £1 billion every single month of taxpayers' money, right? And just to remember for everybody at home, when you can't afford that extra present for your kids, or when you and your wife or your husband decide you can't actually afford that dream holiday that you want, remember it's because you're being taxed more than you've almost ever been taxed ever, certainly more than since the Second World War. That's because it's going, at least to some of it, £1 billion every month in welfare benefits to foreigners. So people who come here to sit in houses we've given them and be given free money to sit around. Do they sitting around and integrating? And well, I'll let you all answer that, but I think I know the answer.
Yeah, absolutely right. And meanwhile, we'll give you Migrant of the Day today. An Albanian model who's been jailed after posting a picture of himself with £240,000 of drug money is hoping he can stay here on a legal technicality because apparently his lawyers are claiming that when he first came to Britain, he was of good character and he only became a drug lord after he'd been here for a while.
Well, if that's the case, then all these guys shouldn't come to Britain because we're clearly corrupting wonderful, godly people, and we should send them all back. I mean, this is the number of stories of this that we've seen is just absolutely astronomical. The words on, I think, the man who won't be deported because of his right to a family life, despite his crime being raping his own stepchildren.
Yeah.
Speaking on the same topic, it's not very nice for breakfast. Somebody yesterday was caught doing the same thing to a pony, which I had to reread the title several times. And then we all know the Iranian who was smuggling in sex toys. There was the bloke who can't be deported back to Albania because his son doesn't like foreign chicken nuggets. The Caribbean woman who won't be deported back to the Caribbean because her Latvian husband wouldn't like the spicy food. They are laughing at us, and they are prioritising this international law nonsense over the existential safety and future of our country. Remember that. We could stop the boats in a heartbeat because we've got a big Royal Navy still. We could do it very easily. And as Dominic Cummings says, if the Prime Minister tried to order the Royal Navy to stop the boats, then the Cabinet Secretary, the deep, shadowy person in charge of the country, really, would have the Prime Minister, the democratically elected Prime Minister, however much I hate Starmer, would have him arrested for trying to secure our borders because they care about international law and fancy dinner parties more than they care about our safety and our prosperity.
I know, it's absolutely staggering stuff. Great to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. James Price there, common sense as ever, former government advisor. I wish he was advising this government. He could tell them a thing or two to get themselves sorted out. Let's get a voice note from Russ.
Morning, Mike. Russ from Hertfordshire here. Is there any way we can get the King to dissolve this rotten, useless government? Because at the end of the day, I don't think there's going to be an England left to govern for the next lot. Cheers, Mike. Try and have a good day.
Thank you, Russ. Rachel Reeves is out and about, doing the rounds, talking to various people, various different networks, various different channels. She won't be coming here, of course. She's wearing black. How appropriate for killing off the economy. I give you 10 out of 10. Thank you very much indeed. This is Talk.
Months, not even just last year, the government was banging on about how the economy was in a terrible state, they've inherited it, and they're having to make major changes, and everything is all wrong. And then they get into trouble with their own backbenchers about the winter fuel cut, which was one of the stupidest political decisions I've ever come across. I mean, really stupid politically. Forget about the cost savings. Yeah. Which, and now they've had to do a massive tire-screeching, road-marking U-turn in the street outside Parliament as they head now in the opposite direction. And their excuse at the dispatch box the other day was...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham, with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. And you can, of course, get in touch with us a variety of ways. 87222 is the text number. You can find us on X at talkTV. You can call us 03444991000. Later on in the show, we'll have an appreciation of the Beach Boys' genius singer-songwriter, Brian Wilson, who died last night, aged 82. His masterpieces included Good Vibrations and California Girls, of course. He had dementia and has struggled with a long battle with mental illness. His family say they're heartbroken. This from Mary in Kent. She says, "Morning, Mike. I'm sick of the constant lies that this useless government comes out with. The illegal migration is out of control and has changed forever this country. The NHS is completely broken. I've been waiting nearly a year for an appointment to see a rheumatologist. All I can do is wait, and it's so stressful." And Nigel in Caerphilly in South Wales. "I'm 64 in July. Last week I got a letter from HMRC. I'm 64 in July. Last week I got a letter from HMRC informing me that I will reach retirement age in July 2028. What a waste of bloody money. I already know my retirement age. I didn't need a special letter from them 3 years ahead of the time to let me know." Well, apparently HMRC are going to stop sending you letters because they're going to save themselves 50 million quid. But who knows how that's all going to play out. We've got a voice note from Dan on Labour.
Morning, Mike. It's Dan from Kent. Does anyone remember the board game Go for Broke, where to win, you had to lose all your money and assets? Well, I think Labour's finally found something they're good at. Great show.
Thanks very much indeed, Dan. Let's talk now to Mike Nichols, economist and founder of Chesterton's Estate Agency based in Gibraltar. Yesterday we found out from David Lammy that he'd gone over to Gibraltar to sort of do a deal which they're calling a post-Brexit deal, finally, to be done with Spain. So the border control between Gibraltar and Spain will now be operated by Spain. I think there might still be a few niceties to be completed, but let's find out what Mr Nichols thinks of it. Mike, very good morning to you.
Morning.
So, depending on who you talk to, this is either a good idea because people will be able to go backwards and forwards across the border a little bit easier than they could before, or it's the sort of first step in a process which could lead to Gibraltar being given back to Spain in some way.
For us in Gibraltar, it's a really good idea. We have a hard border with Spain because we're UK and they're in Schengen, and we have 28,000 jobs in Gibraltar, 15,000 of which are fulfilled by people living in Spain. So they have to cross the border. And there's an existential threat to our business model, to our economy, if proper Schengen controls are enforced at that border. And by concession, they're not today, but they could be. So what the deal has done, albeit it's only a page-and-a-half agreement, there's no detail, is to move that border to the airport. So we're sort of 35,000 residents are emancipated. We can go and live the dream and wander across into Europe and back again. These Spanish-based workers, they're not all Spanish, but those who live in Spain, they can come into Gibraltar to fulfill all the jobs. We need them, our economy needs them, and tourists can go to and fro. So we think it's quite clever that the border moves to the airport, so it inconveniences some who arrive by air and want to stay in Gib, but it's brilliant for the many who are living here. So, you know, the unions want it both sides of the border, business wants it both sides of the border, and I now think I live in a better place. So on the ground, we think this is pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, I guess in previous times, Spain could have eased their restrictions if they'd wanted to before this, but, you know, this has now been done with David Lammy, perhaps because they think that this is a more friendly government to them.
Well, I think because we've got a left-leaning government in Spain, that's the only reason we've got this deal. And I don't see that the right-wing government in Spain would have allowed this. They retain a sovereignty claim. The deal all says, you know, everyone's claim to sovereignty remains as it was. Spain is still sort of a pretty hostile in its blood in terms of Gib, so that won't go away. There will be some.
And they would still like to have ownership of Gibraltar, wouldn't they?
Yes, I think so, because NATO needs us here. The Americans want us here. We have a deep naval base here. We have a military defence base here at the mouth of the Mediterranean. You know, strategically, we're really well located. So I think strategically we're best belong to the UK. We want to belong to the UK. I was at an event last night singing the national anthem, the King Charles's birthday. In many respects, we're more patriotic and British and
sure you are.
Loyal to the crown than you guys in the UK, which is the country I left 20 years ago. And that will remain. We're vehemently British, but we'd like this deal. It allows us to flourish. It's really quite optimistic for us here. Right.
And I mean, my point earlier, though, was that the Spanish would still quite like to get their hands on Gibraltar at some point, wouldn't they? And so you're not worried that this makes it sort of slightly more easy for them, possibly as a first step?
Well, I think that's the underlying concern. that give an inch, take a mile. We are told no one's seen the detail. All that's been published is a 1.5-page press statement. No one's seen anything more. There's probably going to be a 1,000-page treaty. So no one's seen it, but everyone has said that, and even the Spanish have admitted that there's no claim to sovereignty through this deal. So the devil's always in the detail. To be sure, give an inch, take a mile. That saying is true. We'll be very, very sure that if that turns out to be the case, that there is no giving up of any sovereignty of any nature, then this is a deal which is very welcomed by us, true local Gibraltarians, plus many expats like me who've been here many years, to keep, we're living a very good British life in the Mediterranean in an economy which will now flourish even more. So, we think we've done well if it turns out as we're told. We don't know that yet.
Well, I mean, I would be very careful with anything you get told by this particular government, because it's not a question of whether they're left-wing or right-wing. They just seem to be they have a slightly strange relationship with the truth.
That's true, but
to be honest.
I think we're all here with the Chief Minister we got here is very capable, very able, and I think we trust him to do the right thing by Gibraltar. We for 300 years, these guys here, it's in their blood to look after their future, to look after the Rock of Gibraltar. And I'd be surprised if that wasn't the case. But
so do they see that Gibraltar is now effectively in Schengen then?
Well, we're I don't know what you'd call it, but perhaps we're called an associate member of Schengen. But I know, as a resident of Gibraltar, I now don't have to have my passport stamped when I go across the border. I won't have to queue. This won't happen for months and months and months. We've got a text that, this is 6-9 months away.
Yeah.
But in 6-9 months, I'll be able to wander in and out of Spain. I'll be able to drive to Portugal. I'll be able to do what I want. And that, I won't have any of this 90 and 180-day shenanigans. But I'll be living in the British territory. I'll be paying Gibraltar tax, which is less than your tax over there. It'll be sunny. It sounds quite idyllic to me, subject to all the caveats that I've said.
Yeah, absolutely. Good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Mike Nichols, economist and founder of Chesterton's estate agency, based in Gibraltar. So the people of Gibraltar are happy to have the deal done, but as he says, as long as it says what it's meant to say. And with David Lambie, you can never quite trust what it's meant to say, can you? Because he's the guy that gave away the Chagos Islands. Nigel in Doncaster says, Rachel from Accounts said she would fix the economy. Well, I think she looked up the wrong definition of fix. The economy is in a right fix. And Glenn from Leeds says, my God, I've just seen Reeves on Sky News. She looks broken. Well, she's been up all night. Quite fitting she's dressed in black today to mourn the economy that she has broken. And Dan from Kent says, I heard Rachel Reeves saying yesterday, we're fixing the foundations. Are these Labour morons just parrots on repeat? Well, they just keep saying things which aren't true. And they're either totally delusional or they're just liars. James Price said it right there, said it out loud. That Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer are just liars, because they are. They're telling a load of lies, a load of old rubbish. Front page of the Daily Mail, as delusional drivel. This was in a class of its own. That's his verdict on her spending review yesterday. Coming up, we're going to speak to Kevin Saunders about what's going on in the Channel, because once again, The Sun have got a great story exclusive this morning about migrants just piling onto a dinghy. It's a complete free-for-all now in France, and all this nonsense that Starmer told us was going to happen. The French police are going to go into the water. This was a great exclusive deal that he said he'd done with the French authorities. They're going to get into the water and stop people getting on dinghies. Well, now they're not doing that because they say they can't. It's too dangerous. They're not going to do it. Let's get a voice note from Hannah. We'll come back to that. We'll do it in a minute. 7:32.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 7:34. I'm Mike Graham. And Mike, in January I was made redundant. I took the payout and decided to get as far away from the UK as possible. Currently in Tasmania, says Gary. It breaks my heart to see what this government is doing to the UK and its hard-working, tax-paying people. Margaret in Yorkshire says, Mike, I'm sure if there were hundreds of migrants going to France from the UK, the French would be screaming at us to sort it out. They stand there and watch them leave. Well, we were told only, I would say, a week ago by Keir Starmer that the new rules would mean that we were giving more money to France and to the French authorities because they were going to physically get into the water and they were physically going to stop these migrants from leaving the shores of France, right, of Normandy. But on the front page of The Sun today, as all part of their Broken Borders series, because the broken borders are definitely there, les migrants, c'est difficile, is what the headline says, because Vive la Farce on the front page is showing that plenty of migrants are waiting and piling into dinghies and setting sail for the UK as indifferent police just watched and just looked on. So let's talk to Kevin Saunders, the former Border Force Chief. Kevin, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
So, you know, the more it changes, the plus ça change, I suppose you might say. The more it changes, the more it stays the same. Only it seems to be getting worse.
Yes, it is. It's if it wasn't so serious, it would be hilarious. It's a big problem. The French won't intervene on the beaches now because the migrants throw stones at them, and it's too dangerous.
Right. Well, what happened to this deal that Starmer announced with great fanfare just a week or two ago, saying that, you know, the French are going to change the way that they operate and they're going to go into the water and stop them?
Well, yes, he has said that. 300 metres they're supposed to be going into the water. But that hasn't come into play yet, according to the government. That's a little bit further down the road.
Well, I don't think it's happening, is it? I mean, because at the moment, what the French authorities and the French police are saying is that they won't go into the water to try and remove migrants once they've gone into dinghies because it's too dangerous.
Well, there you go. That's it then. That's the end of that one. The French police tend to do what the politicians tell them. They don't act on their own. So it seems that you're right then, and they've had a turnabout face on their policy.
Well, they've said, thank you very much indeed for the money, but we're not going to do what we said we would do.
Well, they're very good at that, aren't they? I mean, we give them billions, and they're not doing the job.
Right. Meanwhile, we hear from Rachel Reeves yesterday, the Chancellor, that basically we're going to keep putting these people into migrant hotels until 2029. She says that whole process is going to end in this Parliament, which means that, you know, she's basically thrown up the white flag and said to anybody who wants to come, make sure you get in here before 2029, because after that, there won't be any more hotels to put you in.
Well, I don't know where she gets that idea from, because I don't know where they're going to put them. They won't put them anywhere else. And,
well, they're going to give some of them houses, I believe.
Yeah, but they've got to build the houses first,
right.
and they haven't built any of the houses yet.
They haven't built any of the houses, but they are starting to commandeer houses through companies like Serco, aren't they?
Yeah, they're going to rent. They're going to try and rent properties, but the idea that they're going to be able to shut hotels down completely is farcical, because it'll never happen, because migrants are still arriving. I mean, I don't know what the numbers were yesterday. I think it was about 300 by lunchtime. While they continue to arrive in that sort of number, they've got to put them in hotels because there's nowhere else to put them.
Right. But which beggars the question, does it not? Why not just send them straight back?
Oh, well, what a novel idea, Mike.
I know.
What a very novel idea.
I mean, we've seen several examples in America of what you can do to stop illegal migration. We saw Greta Thunberg getting deported from Israel the other day. You know, it took them less than sort of 10 hours to turn that around. You know, we just seem to be incapable of doing anything like that.
Well, yes, I mean, you have to admire the Americans for the way they say that we're going to do this, and then they go and do it. And they don't really seem to care what anybody else thinks.
Right, exactly.
And as you say, the Israelis did it with Thunberg and the boat yesterday. So it's just us. We tend to be... We're very nice people, Mike, and we tend to do things differently to everybody else. In fact, we just cave in.
Well, I mean, that's not a definition of being very nice. That's a definition of being very soft and very stupid, it seems to me.
Well, I wouldn't disagree with you there.
No, exactly right. So what is happening? You know, have you heard from anyone in Border Force or in the Immigration Service or in the Home Office as to what the plan is? Because there doesn't appear to be one. Because all we heard from Rachel Reeves yesterday is there's going to be some more money given out. They're going to try and get their intelligence figure, their intelligence better. £476 million is already going to the French. They're going to put another 380 million or something into border sort of intelligence, so that they're going to be able to work out where these gangs are. Well, we know where they are. They're in France, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, this idea that they're going to smash the gangs and stop the boats that way is just well, it's not going to happen. I mean, we've seen them. They've had some success. They have taken a few gangs out, but they haven't taken out enough gangs to stop the trafficking. In fact, if anything, the trafficking there's more people coming across, not less.
Right.
So that policy has failed miserably.
Yeah. So, I mean, for the next, 3 months, we're going to see reasonably good weather. We're going to see thousands more people coming. What is the answer? What is the government going to do?
Well, basically, unless Keir Starmer gets an agreement with Macron, we're just going to have more and more migrants coming to the UK because there is nothing else. We can't stop them coming because our policies are just too soft, as you alluded to earlier.
Yeah.
Until we actually say, no, we're full up, we can't take any more, we're not going to allow any more in, we're going to put the Navy on the channel, we're going to turn the boats around and push them back to France or something like that, then we're stuck.
Yeah, it would seem so. Kevin, thanks very much indeed. Kevin Saunders, former Border Force chief. I mean, it just seems ridiculous, doesn't it? The story just goes round and round and round and round. Shall we have a look at what Rachel Reeves said about it being the end of the asylum hotels?
The party opposite left behind a broken system. Billions of pounds of taxpayers' money spent on housing asylum seekers in hotels, leaving people in limbo and shunting the cost of failure onto local communities. We won't let that stand. So I can confirm today that, led by the work of my right honourable friend, the Home Secretary, we will be ending the costly use of hotels to house asylum seekers in this Parliament. Funding that I have provided today, including from the Transformation Fund, will cut the asylum backlog, hear more appeal cases and return people who have no right to be here, saving the taxpayer £1 billion a year.
All these people cheering Rachel Reeves saying that she's going to deport people and she's going to kick them out of the hotels. Are these all the same people that said the Tories were evil and right-wing and bigoted and Nazi-like for trying to stop the illegal boats from coming to this country? Are they the same people? Surely they can't be. Let's get a voice note from Hannah.
Government is prioritising anyone over the British people. They are lying, the economy is stagnating, and every week schools across this country are closing. Every week. This morning, I'm part of a group called No Taxation in Education, and this morning another parent posted on the group that their school was closing. That's children having been displaced in the middle of GCSEs. That's jobs lost, teachers, caretakers, cooking staff, cleaning staff. And these are often in small rural communities where jobs are scarce. I could just cry for what this country has become.
It is awful, isn't it? Hannah, thanks very much indeed for that. Same one here from Stuart, who says, Mike, the optics don't look good. British people removed from tenancies to make room for migrants while decriminalising homelessness. Looks like the plan is for Brits to sleep on the streets so migrants can have the houses. Well, the other way of looking at that, and there's a story in one of the papers this morning about it, the fear of tent cities growing up like they have in America. You go to Los Angeles, you go to New York, you go to Chicago, you go to any Democrat-based city or Democrat-run city, and they've got these tent cities everywhere. You know, thousands of homeless people just sleeping rough in camps on the street. That's effectively what Angela Rayner has allowed to happen. She has decided that those people will not anymore be roughed up, they won't be moved on, they won't be asked to leave the area, they'll just be allowed to continue to live there in a tented city, homeless. And it won't any longer be an offence. That's where we are. 0344 499 1000. Coming up, Harry Cole's here, the Sun editor at large. He's written a big piece in the paper today about the Klarmer Chancellor. He's no longer the Iron Chancellor because it's buy now, pay later. This is Talk.
What is your plan? How are you going to stop the boats? How are you going to... OK, stop. Let me have my point. Answer two really simple questions very simply. Where are these asylum seekers going? It's a simple question. And what's your plan to stop them coming here in the first place? That's what people want, James. Where are they going?
Well, some of them will be sent home if their applications are rejected, and we want to bring down that backlog. That's the first duty, and that's what we've been doing since the election last year.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock, of course. We are the home of common sense. There's not much common sense coming out of the government or indeed coming out of the Treasury. Harry Cole's got a piece today on page 10, editor-at-large at The Sun. He says that the UK's national debt stands at more than 100% of GDP, 2.7 trillion. Right? Let's hope the Chancellor doesn't need a major rainy day fund anytime soon, or she really will turn into the new Gordon Brown. He's calling her the Klarner Chancellor this morning. Harry Cole is here. Harry, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. How are we doing?
Well, I mean, not great, to be honest. I'm trying to find out from all of these spurious numbers that are coming out of the Treasury and coming out of the Chancellor of the Exchequer's office, which ones are actually real, because it's a sort of smoke and mirrors job, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you can pretty much ignore everything that the Chancellor said in her speech yesterday. There was a lot of spin there. She sort of read out lots of figures of what she was spending. If you only have a look at the sort of bottom line of what she was meant to be doing, which was actually tightening the belt a little bit, getting a bit of control under over government spending over the next 3 years, it's not that much. There's a lot of sort of efficiency savings, which some people are saying are going to be cuts, other people are saying using AI and various other things. It's all very woolly, very vague. And experts saying that, yes, she's borrowed absolute fortune, an extra 140 billion, the IFS is saying, which has gone straight on the debt. But even on top of that borrowing, she's going to need tax rises in the autumn to fill some shortfalls, not least because we saw today's, GDP figures this morning. In April, the economy contracted by 0.3%, and what surprise, that's April when her national insurance hikes kicked in, businesses, have been absolutely squeezed from the 1st of April, plus a bit of international sort of ups and downs with Donald Trump. It's not looking good.
No, it's really not. And I mean, this is the problem. 6 months ago, they were applying the winter fuel allowance takeaway and saying to people that, I'm really sorry about this, but we've got to do it. Hard choices have to be made, etc., etc. They've now reversed that because they said the economy was on the up and it was improving and they'd fixed it. Well, clearly they haven't fixed it if it's still shrinking.
Yeah, it's a completely remarkable turnaround, isn't it, from the doom and gloom that we had for the first 6 months of this government. Then they realised they were at risk of talking the country into a recession, and now magically they've managed to say, "Oh look, actually we've fixed it." Jonathan Jessup, an economist, just tweeted this morning, absolutely brilliant spot. Hang on, let me just get it up. He said, Julian Jessup, sorry, he's an economist. He said, a year ago to the very day, Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, was responding to the Conservative government's weak GDP data for the month of April. And Rachel Reeves herself says, Rishi Sunak claims we've turned a corner, but the economy has stalled and there is no growth. They have failed. So we can judge it by our own words exactly a year ago to the day.
Well, exactly right. And I mean, yesterday in Prime Minister's Questions, when Kemi Badenoch was having a go at how bad the economy actually was, Keir Starmer accused her of talking down Britain. And so the roles have been completely reversed, haven't they?
I mean, they are on very weak ground if they're accusing anyone of talking about Britain. Rewind back to last July, all the way through their first few months in office, they were literally salting the earth, poisoning the well, saying how terrible is the black holes here, and we've got to, we're here to fix things. And actually, they managed to spook business confidence. They managed to spook consumer confidence. Footfall suddenly started falling, and everyone actually started to tighten their belts, thinking, well, if things are so bad, then maybe we won't spend as much.
Right.
So they've got to be really careful. It's one thing in opposition, crowing and making lots of noise, but when the Chancellor and the Prime Minister say something, markets listen, consumers listen, and businesses listen. So I really do think they should probably wind their necks in a little bit on that one.
Yeah, I think so. Because, I mean, Liam Halligan's done a bit of analysis as well on the sort of the spend department by department, and most of it is contracting. And their previous mantra has been, we're going to spend money in the public sector in order to create growth. So they've kind of gone against their own thought process here, haven't they?
Well, if you look at the sort of day-to-day running of government departments, that is getting squeezed a little bit, but it's only really going to save 1.5 billion over the next 3 years once you sort of weigh in the fact that they're increasing NHS spending by 3% a year. That will go up to something, almost £250 billion on the health service by 2029 will be its budget. Despite coming in and saying they're going to reform the NHS, and that isn't necessarily mean to giving it more money. That seems to have gone out the window. They made a big noise about announcing that they were going to get rid of asylum hotels by 2029. That was, again, another broken promise, because they promised to get rid of them within 12 months of coming into office. Well, that's about now, and they definitely haven't done that. And even in 2029, when they say they're going to get rid of these asylum hotels, they're still going to be sending more than $2 billion a year housing migrants, just not in hotels. Where that will be remains to be seen. But then if you look at the capital spending, there's they're tightening the sort of day-to-day running of Whitehall departments, but a massive splurge on net zero projects, on railway projects outside of the southeast, on nuclear power. So look, this bill is literally, as I said, it's buy now, pay later. They're desperate to get some spades in the ground. They're desperate to get cranes in the sky, to be seen like they're doing something, to try and sort of counter that sort of Nigel Farage reform surge. They're going to be, focusing a lot of their efforts in communities outside of London, outside of the southeast, in the Red Wall, and we're picking up the tab.
And the jobs that they keep saying they're creating, though, aren't seemingly going to materialise. I mean, all the thousands and thousands of jobs that they say they're going to create in the housing market, nobody believes that. People say we haven't got the people to actually build these houses. The houses aren't being built. There aren't builders. There aren't enough bricklayers. There aren't enough, hod carriers. There aren't enough, plasterers, plumbers, all the rest of it, electricians. Simply, they won't be able to do it. Similarly, the defence jobs, according to BAE up in Barrow, they're looking at maybe creating something like 7,000 jobs. Not the thousands, not the tens of thousands of jobs that Starmer keeps claiming.
Yeah, look, this is where the sort of skill shortages in this country and the government's rhetoric and migration problems all come into the crunch. Is the fact is there aren't enough skilled people already ready. We should be training more and more people, and if they can plough some of that money into training people, that's only a good thing. But how much of this will be relying on imported labour remains to be seen. And the other thing with all these projects, yes, this is the price tag they're saying they are now, but find me a single project, infrastructure project in this country that hasn't gone over time and over budget in the last 40 years. So, we could be looking at even more borrowing and an even bigger black hole when the spades get in the ground and lo and behold, they find some newts or some bats or some sort of rare variety of beaver, and the whole thing's delayed, or useless incompetence means that they buy the wrong concrete, and we're suddenly looking at a 10-year project rather than 2-year project.
Well, I think there's currently a prison that's being built in South Wales, which has been the building work's been halted because they found 3 bats somewhere nearby, and so they've obviously had to stop the idea of knocking anything down. Let me show you this. Andrew Neil talking to Times Radio yesterday pretty much gave a damning sort of verdict on what Rachel Reeves is going to do next. Have a look.
I've never seen a government lose so much support so quickly. And it's not clear that anything the Chancellor had to say is going to change that. And if the Chancellor has to come back in October, as I think she will, with big tax rises because she can't borrow more and the sums will not add up, if she's got to do that, then I think that's the end of her political career.
Is he right? Do you think that's going to be over for her?
Look, she's in a bind because the problem is she's saying, look, I'm not going to break my fiscal rules not to increase borrowing day to day. She's bound in with a manifesto that says you can't put up national insurance, VAT or income tax. I suspect she'll do some jiggery-pokery on the fact that she announced that income tax thresholds were going to be unfrozen in next year. I suspect they'll probably end up being frozen for a little bit longer, which is a stealth tax. It drags more people into paying more income tax. Andrew is a wise sage, and I question his judgment on this. I think he's been around long enough to know what he sees coming down the line. I think she's in a really tricky spot at the moment. There's no sort of number 10 say there's not a cigarette paper between her and Keir Starmer on the economy. He's outsourced his entire economic thinking to Rachel Reeves, so to fire her or to move her really would reflect badly on him, because he doesn't really have an economic or really a political brain of his own. So it will blow back on him very quickly. But she's adamant that she won't be changing those rules. And if the Prime Minister decides that actually he'd rather do borrowing rather than tax rises, given how unpopular reorder he is, he could force her into a U-turn. It'd be the biggest U-turn and the most humiliating U-turn yet. But she's making it clear she'd walk.
Yes. Well, I mean, he's not shy with the old U-turns, is he? I mean, the winter fuel payment was a pretty massive U-turn. I wouldn't be surprised if he does a few more between now and Christmas. But we shall see. Harry, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Harry Cole there, editor-at-large from The Sun, with the news as well, of course, that the UK economy has shrunk by 0.3% in April, according to the Office for National Statistics, which pretty much proves that they got it wrong, and they're going to have to try harder, and they're going to have to come back once again with a better plan, because the plan at the moment is simply not working. It's really as simple as that. Coming up, we've got lots more to do. We'll keep your calls coming in, 0344 499 1000. One here from Russell in Alicante. Great show. He says, my wife retired 2 years ago. She said she was fed up with the government taking half her salary in tax and wasting it. So we sold up and moved to Spain, taking all our money with us. Her tax bill every year was £250,000. Imagine how many people are doing the same thing. Well, I mean, that is the problem. As I was saying, that the tax take gets smaller and smaller and smaller the longer a government like this stays in, because more and more people either move away or make less money or decide to somehow restructure the way that they live, so that they actually don't have as much tax to pay, and so that the government doesn't collect as much tax. And so in the end, the government is left holding the bag and they haven't got any money. It's that simple. Now, we said to you yesterday, there's a brand new little feature here on Morning Glory, because you can get in touch with us a variety of ways. You can send us an email, you can send us a text, you can send us a tweet, you can send us a voice note on WhatsApp. You can now also send a letter to The Sun. And this morning, some of the big names in the Sun are writing about Greta. Because, of course, Greta Thunberg was high in the news early on in the week when she was arrested by the Israeli authorities and then deported for trying to get to Gaza on a flotilla called the Freedom Flotilla. According to Craig, who's in Norfolk, he says this: Greta Thunberg knew the charity boat she was on would never reach Gaza. It was just a publicity event for her, in case we had forgotten. all about her. If she really wanted to make a statement, she should have fought her deportation from Israel like some of the others. Instead, she's heading back home to Sweden to do lots of TV interviews. What an egocentric, attention-seeking brat. I think Craig speaks for all of us. And Stephen in South East London says, why does Greta Thunberg not get a proper job rather than just gallivanting around the world doing nothing of any use? Well, that's a very good point. That's what you get on the letters page. And if you want to write to them, you can email them, you can fax them, you can text them on 07537410199. We'll let you know all sorts of other things that are good coming out of the news this morning. That's this from Mike Graham in Colchester, I should say. We are heading towards December the 15th, 1976. Labour had to go to the IMF cap in hand for a bailout. Rachel from accounts will be the female version of Dennis Healey. I'm old enough to remember that, and it was very humiliating for Dennis Healey, but also incredibly humiliating for the country, because it meant that literally we couldn't manage our own finances and we had to get help from an international body. Charles is in Thailand. He says, can I ask a question? Reeves is going to borrow yet more money, so what happens when the banks and finance houses where she borrows from say no more? The UK is a basket case, get lost. What happens then? Well, that's a very good point. I'll tell you what happens then. That's when she goes cap in hand to the IMF. Barry says this, just seen a flock of flying pigs trailing a Labour banner saying the economy is fixed and immigration has been solved. Yeah, I know what you mean. Coming up in the next hour, we'll hear from more of you. We'll talk some more about the fallout from Rachel Reeves and her speech yesterday. This is Talk. Good evening and welcome to Plank of the Week. It's the one show where you do not have to be worried about judgmental people because we'll do all the judging for you. Let's just have a look at how Humphrey Useless is now spending his time.
There goes your career, mate.
Over there a bit is over towards where all the migrants come in. He's jumping there. There he goes. He goes over the bar.
Hello,
and
lady.
unfortunately, it catches on his Johnson.
If he's Plank of the Week, he's got a sizable plank.
That's a whole different show.
Plank of the Week, Fridays at 7 on Talk.
Hi, I'm Kevin O'Sullivan, and I've got a message for you. Welcome back to this blockbuster edition of What Just Happened. It really is a good one, I think. It's so funny that people keep calling me
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through to 10 o'clock. This is, of course, the home of common sense. We're trying to make sense of what happened yesterday in Parliament, where, of course, Rachel Reeves got up to unveil her spending review, which has been roundly mocked, criticised and taken apart pretty much by all and sundry. All sorts of commentators saying it's basically tax and spend, it's basically pay now, buy now, pay later. Andrew Neil describes it as delusional drivel. This was in a class of its own, he said. And Rachel Reeves can't be too long for this world as Chancellor of the Exchequer, can she? Coming up in this hour, we'll be bringing you the breaking news. The economy shrank by 0.3% in April, contrary to what the Labour government tells you, and contrary to what most of the statements from the Prime Minister's office have been over the last several weeks. They've been talking about how they were able to do a U-turn on the withdrawal of the pensioners' fuel allowance because what? Because the economy had recovered, because they'd stabilised it. Well, of course, they haven't done anything of the sort. Let's get a voice note from Gary.
Gary from Canterbury. Yesterday you saw a driverless car. Today we see a driverless government hitting bollards as they go down the road, one after the other, as they're trying to learn how to actually navigate different things. I'm sorry, and that quip about what he said, or what Rachel Reeves said about Farage yesterday being in the Westminster Arms is totally unacceptable. I mean, quite honestly, she should go. Anyway, great show, Mike. Have a great day.
Gary, thank you very much indeed. Well, funny enough, Nigel Farage put out his own tweet last night from the Westminster Arms, saying maybe she should get down to Westminster Arms more often and meet some real people. We shall see. 0344 499 1000. David in South Wales says, how can anyone in government talk about reducing the migrants in hotels in 4 years if they have no interest in stopping the source of the problem? It's a very good point. We talk about that, plus much else besides. There's some trouble in the Middle East brewing, it would seem. US embassies have been told to evacuate their staff and some of their families in various different embassies in the Middle East, in Baghdad, in Bahrain, I think in Kuwait as well. Suggestions that there might be something brewing with Iran. Nobody's quite sure yet what that is. 0344 499 1000. Also, we're going to be talking about some disquiet in Salford last night. There were some people, some youth chucking stones and rocks at the police. We've got some riots going on in Northern Ireland, which are related to illegal migrants or legal migrants coming into the community as well. We'll explore all of that. Also, we will talk about the private school pupil refused NHS care with Peter Hitchens. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Let's have another voice note. This one's from Pete on Labour.
What's worse is Kianocchio and all those other cartoon characters that are in his front bench actually believe the lies they tell. They've actually lied so much that they think it's all true. Well, the only truth is they're putting this country down the drain, Mike. Can we have a referendum, please? Can this country have a referendum now, today, tomorrow, next week? Can we please have a referendum?
Well, Keir Starmer normally is quite keen on referendums. He wanted to have another referendum on Brexit, remember? He doesn't mention that much anymore, funnily enough. But there we are. David Lammy, meanwhile, off to Gibraltar. Is he selling it down the river? We'll find out, I'm sure, in the fullness of time. Let's talk to Peter Hitchens, though. He's here this morning talking to us about a great many things. Peter, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
I'm reading your piece this morning in the Mail about this private school story, which is really quite a remarkable story. It was broken, I think, at the weekend by the Mail on Sunday. The case of a young boy in Kingston who was refused NHS care because, supposedly, according to the paediatrician that he was referred to, because basically he went to private school and they wouldn't have any provision for him.
That's it. It's an extraordinary scoop by my colleague Elizabeth Ivans, and it's been followed a bit, but I don't think it's taken off as much as it should do, perhaps because you need a little bit of political training to understand how significant it is. The National Health Service, which is supposed to be free at the point of use to everyone, equal, non-discriminatory, is actually, and there are several other accounts in the article which Elizabeth also discovered, is actually discriminating against the parents of children who go to private school. Now, this isn't just the stupid spite of grim-faced bureaucrats. There's something very central to this about this government. Now, it seems to me to be far longer than a year since I went on every available platform to say to people, for heaven's sake, do not allow Keir Starmer to become Prime Minister. Don't on an emotional spasm allow this extremely worrying person to become Prime Minister, and was completely ignored and laughed at, as I usually am when I say the truth. And people are now seeing in everything that they observe, from the ridiculous budget of Rachel Reeves to the growing collapse in employment and the frankly terrifying state of the national accounts, that things are very bad. But it's also political. It's not just economic. It's not just competence. This is a government profoundly radical, and the thing that was at the heart of its program, which it actually openly said it was going to do, was to put VAT, of course, on private schools. And the effect of this is not to destroy the private schools. The private schools ultimately can go and set up branches, many of them already have, all over Asia and the rest of the world, if they want to, even if the government made them illegal. Very rich people will always be able to avoid the state education system. And that has no effect on that. The people who are affected by this are those, the quite large number of people with very small margins of money, which enable them just about to send their children to private school because they believe very strongly in independent education for many reasons, whether they're religious or simply for the quality of the education. Whatever it is, those are the people who are being attacked. Why is this going on? Why is it so important to this government that people attend state schools? Because they have been trying for many, many years to make education a vehicle of their egalitarian program. The comprehensive schools were never set up because somebody discovered that comprehensive education was better and produced better results. On the contrary, it was known from the start that it would reduce standards. The comprehensive schools were brought in the 60s because they would be egalitarian, because they would get rid of the old-fashioned, how shall I put it, conservative style of education, where teachers had authority, where there was a body of knowledge which had to be taught, and which were traditional on subjects like patriotism and religion. Those schools were bulldozed and done away with. But there remains this island of resistance, around 17%, I think, of the number of children going to school, where this is not totally pursued. And the government, I believe, ideologically, and this is a very ideological government, wants to stamp that out. So when you see the National Health Service being used to punish people for sending their children to private schools, you're seeing something profoundly worrying. This is the development of a People's Republic in embryo. Not violently. There are going to be no red militias marching down the street and taking up residence in the Ritz. This is going to be slow, if you like, respectable, done by people wearing suits, often done by lawyers, but it changes the nature of this country. And if the schools are ultimately a monopoly of left-wing ideology, then all of us now living are going to see our children and grandchildren unable even to understand what we're talking about when we say that this country used to be better than it now is. And it will be lucky if our grandchildren don't actually denounce us to the secret police.
Well, indeed. I mean, this is the thing. It's as you say, it has been growing, even just in the past year since they've been in. You know, people have conversations about things that I haven't heard people talking about. I saw a conversation on Times Radio the other day by some people saying, you know, wouldn't it be better if there wasn't any inheritance? And, you know, inheritance is ultimately unfair, and some people get an advantage in life if they inherit money. Well, hang on a minute. You know, so what you're saying now, what you're going to do away with inheritance, and you're going to...
Well, this is next.
That's how it starts, though, isn't it?
But ever since the COVID panic, there's been, because of the immense amounts of non-existent money spent on that, there's been a muttering among the left-wing thinking classes that we should be going for a wealth tax. Now, people think, oh, wealth tax, that'll only go for millionaires. Actually, anybody who owns a house or has any kind of inheritance is threatened by this.
Yeah.
This is not a government which believes very strongly in private property. And I wouldn't trust them with it. And as this is the economic crisis which they have helped to worsen, it was bad when they started, but it's worse now.
Yeah.
As that crisis worsens, then the temptation, the confiscatory tax, and to go for people's actual savings will grow and grow. And I think you need to worry about this. As I said, this is why I said, don't, for goodness sake, let them in. And what anyone's going to do to get them out again, I have no idea. But this is not just another government. This isn't just the old ding-dong of the 50s and 60s, Labour, Tory. This really, ever since Blair, has been, each time a Labour government comes into office, it hugely shifts the ratchet towards things which would actually during the Cold War had been regarded as quite close to communism. Let's say ideological health service, discrimination against people for sending their children to private schools, the monitoring of expressed opinion, and, as I say, growing threats of the private wealth of the middle class. This is serious political stuff. It will change the country, and unless people can understand what it is they're up against and organise against it, not with slogans about immigration and face coverings, but with actual serious, thoughtful policies about how we need to push back this revolution and counter it and explain to people how their freedoms are under threat, then it will all go. And here is a tremendously powerful straw in the wind, a warning to us all of what's coming, this treatment of parents.
Yes. I think the other clue for me in the way that this government is approaching the running of the country is that they're constant sort of fibs. And they're not really fibs, they're lies, actually. You know, constant sort of stream of claims that come out of Downing Street, that came out of Rachel Reeves yesterday, that they're creating thousands of jobs, which they're not, that they're going to build millions of homes, which they're not, which they're going to stop the migration problem, which they aren't, you know, but they keep telling us the economy has been fixed. You know, they tell us that, you know, our plan is working. They keep issuing these kind of, you know, rather ridiculous slogans, but they must know they're not telling the truth.
Well, they do. A lot of the purpose of propaganda is to explain to people that they're powerless. You say something which everybody knows to be untrue, and you say it, and it goes unchallenged, and people feel powerless. One of the great things we do still have in this country is at least a partially independent media with some conservative voices still audible and still quite loud in our society. And without those, I have to say we'd be a lot worse off than we are now. But it's not enough. There has to be some development in the political world of a coherent, thoughtful and knowledgeable response to this, and an understanding that the Labour Party, as it is, has been really since the Blairite takeover, is a dogmatic ideological party which smiles outwardly and pretends to be a normal group of people, but is actually a strongly dogmatic, more or less revolutionary movement. And it will revolutionise the country unless somebody stops it. And the Tory party won't stop it in its current state. And I'm sorry to say that Reform UK won't either, because Reform UK reaches for slogans and performs and goes up in the polls, but it has no serious understanding of what this new Labour movement and what this Starmer government is all about. And until they develop that understanding, they can't fight it. You can't fight an enemy you don't understand.
Yeah, and I mean, it goes from bad to worse, doesn't it? Because as they get more desperate, presumably they reach out for more measures to control either the population and the economy, both of which at the moment they can't control.
I think there is always that danger, of course, that when the economic crisis deepens, as I very much fear it does, then the country will become harder to govern. And when countries become harder to govern, governments too sometimes reach for repressive measures. And I also point out in my article today a very interesting development last week of the PREVENT programme.
Yes.
Beginning to classify what many of us would regard as perfectly normal mainstream views about the effects of mass immigration as somehow or other fringe and extremist. And once the government starts ruling that certain opinions are extremist, then the police start treating it as extremist. And the next thing you know, the police are on your doorstep for expressing an opinion which 5 years ago would have been, someone could have said on BBC Question Time, and no one would have marked it. Right. There is a great narrowing of the area in which things can actually be debated, and also a very weak movement in favour of true freedom of speech. There's not much really serious defence of it. Toby Young's organisation has done some good things, but ultimately we're not really standing up for the defences which we have, either of freedom of speech or indeed of our justice system, which is increasingly becoming populist and propagandist and not particularly fair, and as a result producing a very large number of miscarriages of justice.
Yes, it's really a very, very bad place we are in, I think, and I think it's only going to get worse.
I think it is bad, but I think and I've said for a long time that it seems to me to be hopeless, but say I'm about 100 years old and will be dead soon, so I would think that. But if anybody is seriously interested in this, they really do need to understand, and I do recommend that they they get a grip on what Marxism-Leninism is about, the thing which I once espoused and studied, to understand just exactly what sort of people they're up against, and to develop a serious, intelligent criticism of it, which they can communicate to the electorate and say, these are the dangers we face, these are the solutions to them, and also people should stop making ludicrous promises of great liberations or Singapore on Thames or whatever it is. The only way out of this is a modest way out, to accept that as a country we're not a great power, we're not particularly rich, but we do have fantastic resources and a great, what you might call, social capital of stability and trust, which we can still make use of if we're properly governed. But we do need people who are prepared to do this, not people whose first instinct is to start wars and prance about on the world stage. People who stay at home, who've visited their own country, know what it's like, and who want to fix it. And so I don't at the moment see any sign of this.
No, I think you're right. Peter, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Peter Hitchens there with some wise words. I mean, he has been saying it for a long time, but I think we really have reached this point now where this government's going to start doing some pretty bad things, because they're going to find out that they are out of their depth. They're going to find out that they can't control the economy, and they're going to find out they can't control the people either, who are getting more and more frustrated and more angry with every single week that goes past. Michelle says, James Price is fantastic, spot on. We have had enough of illegal immigrants. It's taking the biscuit now, really. It screams of being done by design. Robert says, we closed our family business at Christmas. We made 11 staff redundant. We now have split the business into 3 different firms. We will keep them all below the VAT threshold, and we'll only have to employ 5 people now. The government inadequacy has forced us into this. And Kevin Spain, Starmer is a weak leader who surrounds himself with weak people, all clinging to their jobs and positions in a weak government. Absolutely right. This is Talk. More coming up.
I think those UK sanctions on the 2 Israeli ministers are really a grave strategic and moral error. And I think that's because it's not principled at all. It's some sort of partisan posturing, which is driven clearly by Labour's domestic politics, not by Britain's national interests. And I think that it's a dangerous double standard. It's not what they do to other countries. It emboldens terrorists and it undermines our allies. Israel is meant to be a strong ally of the UK at its moment of need during this existential war that it's fighting and doing quite well in, one must say. Britain is trying to throw it under the bus.
UK. On DAB+. On your smart speaker. On your smart TV. And on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 8 to 23. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. Obviously, there's an awful lot to talk about this morning. There's an awful lot to do. Let's get a voice note from Andy on short men.
Good morning, Mike. Just listening to that little story on shorter men being less desirable than taller men and, you know, more paranoid and jealous, etc. I'm a short arse, always have been, but I've never suffered with jealousy or anything like that. I've been married for 32 years this year, so all good in my book, mate. Keep up the great work, Mike.
Andy, well said. Of course, I did say when we were doing that story, this is in page 3 of the Daily Mail, it's a massive, massive overgeneralisation, clearly, because it's not true of all people. But certainly there are people, and I don't want to keep picking on Sadiq Khan, but his name just keeps coming up. He's certainly one of those people that you might say suffers from short man syndrome. Morning, Mike. Mauritius should be applauded for paying off its national debt, and 81% of workers paying no income tax is a lesson of what can be done with a sovereign wealth fund. Another thing sadly lacking in this country. Well, Alan, in Staffordshire, you wonder whether or not, in addition to places like Dubai and Abu Dhabi, Mauritius might suddenly become a destination where people can go to start up a business, because people will find out when they get there that you don't have to pay any income tax. And it's all thanks to Great Britain. Marvellous. All thanks to Rachel Reeves. David in South Wales says this: don't you just love it when the government state the UK is the fastest growing economy in the G7? What they always fail to mention is just how much worse off the other G7 economies are compared to the UK. And the UK is financially on its knees. Absolutely right. It is ridiculous, isn't it, the way that people treat some of the politicians and the way the statements come out. Mark from Bolton says this: surely any government has a legal obligation to put British citizens first. Could they not be taken to court for failing in this department and putting illegal immigrants to the front of the queue for housing and NHS care while British citizens suffer? I find it immoral that illegal immigrants are given hotels or houses while veterans who fought for this country are sleeping rough on our streets with nothing. It's a national disgrace, and the politicians responsible should be in prison. Great show as always, Mark. Thanks very much indeed. Let's talk to Elliot Keck. He's head of campaigns at the Taxpayers Alliance. He'll have something to say, I'm sure, about all of this public spending announced yesterday by the Chancellor of the Exchequer. Elliot, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
Good to talk to you. Spending review. The taxpayer is likely to be funding all of it, and the taxpayer, I guess, is likely to be funding more tax rises in the autumn.
Yeah, the taxpayer will be paying for all of it, whether it's tomorrow or many years in the future. The taxpayer will ultimately end up picking up the tab. I think yesterday what we saw was bribery on a colossal scale from an extremely unpopular government that is scrambling around trying to find a way to improve its popularity with the public, and hopes if it throws hundreds of billions of pounds more at the public, it may improve its polling ratings. But I think the public have wisened up to the fact that this isn't going to work, and it's just going to be a massive waste of money that we'll all end up picking up the tab for.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, let's have a look at what Rachel Reeves said on the BBC this morning. She's doing the round. She's obviously not coming to this show for whatever reason. They don't like to do that. But she's talking to the BBC this morning about the shrinking GDP of this country.
The numbers are disappointing, but monthly GDP numbers are particularly volatile. And if you take the 3-month period, the economy grew by 0.7%. I think we also all know that April was a challenging month. It was the month that US tariffs came in, and there was a lot of uncertainty as well. Since then, we've managed to secure 3 trade deals with the US, with India, and with the EU. And of course, yesterday, in the spending review, I set out investment in our key priorities as a country, the priorities of the British people, including investment in affordable housing, in energy, and in local and regional transport projects to bring that growth back to the economy, because weak economic growth has been a challenge in the UK for over a decade now, and I, as Chancellor, am determined to turn around the poor GDP, poor growth numbers, and the poor living standards, because ultimately that's what this is all about. It's about trying to improve the living standards of ordinary working people.
Yeah, how do you think that's going, Elliot, for her, improving the living standards of ordinary working people? I mean, the woman is delusional, isn't she? I mean, she forgets to mention that April was a challenging month, but it wasn't a challenging month because of tariffs. It was a challenging month because an awful lot of companies had put their national insurance up and had put their minimum wage up, so they were forced to actually let people go and not do much business. Insurance up and had put their minimum wage up, so they were forced to actually let people go and not do much business.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Mike. Absolutely right, Mike. And I have to say, despite her experience in customer service, I think she'd struggle to handle 5 minutes with you. So I understand why she avoids your studio like the plague every morning. I think you're absolutely right. Point to the tax rise in April. There's a reason why we saw decent economic growth January to March, and that's because companies were, bringing forward all their economic decisions to avoid those massive tax rises. Some of those tax rises have kicked in. I think the economic growth we're going to see over the rest of the year is going to be extremely poor indeed.
Yeah, I think that is going to be a real problem. And as far as the reliance of people on the strength of the economy in order to kind of think about what they can do if they're running a business, what investment they can put into it. I mean, she's kind of killed all of that stone dead, hasn't she? Because if there are going to be tax rises coming in the autumn, whichever taxes she chooses to put up, people are not going to want to spend any money as entrepreneurs, as businesses. They're not going to want to hire people. They're not going to want to start new projects. They're not going to want to do anything which is liable to stimulate the economy.
Yeah, that's spot on. And we have to remember that last autumn we saw the biggest tax rising budget in UK history. And yet that still wasn't enough for these spendthrift, greedy politicians and greedy, avaricious states. So it's really shocking that only months after we saw the biggest tax rising budget in UK history, we're already talking about coming back for more. And given what we saw yesterday, I'm afraid to say I think she's going to be coming back for significantly more. This isn't going to be tax rises around the margins. This is going to be tax rises that hits people where it hurts.
Yeah, I think so. Elliot, we've got a terrible line, so I'm going to let you go. Thanks very much indeed. Elliot Keck, Head of Campaigns at the Taxpayers Alliance. On the news that the economy shrank by 0.3% in April, according to the Office for National Statistics. It's more bad news for Rachel Reeves. We spoke to Mel Stride this morning, a little bit earlier on in the show. And if you weren't here, because it was so early, here's what he had to say.
What you've got to look at when you look at this spending review is where is the money coming from and can we afford it? And where the money is coming from are these eye-watering taxes that this government is dishing out left, right and centre that has been killing growth, strangling businesses. And also borrowing, of course, borrowing vast amounts of money. Can we afford it? Well, it's looking increasingly dicey to me. We've seen a government that through destroying growth, through stoking inflation, getting interest rates higher than they would otherwise be, adding to this huge mound of national debt, the servicing costs on which incidentally are 100 billion a year in interest alone. That's twice what we spend on defence. You're really seeing a government that's losing control of the public finances, I'm afraid. And I think it means in the autumn we could be in for some really further difficult news with some tax rises.
Yeah, so already everybody's being sort of softened up for tax rises in the autumn. Well, nobody asked if we wanted more tax rises. Nobody asked if we wanted to have a government that was completely out of control with its spending and its borrowing. Nobody asked if Rachel Reeves was going to be a great Chancellor because we were told, weren't we, that she would be the first woman Chancellor, the first woman, and women and girls will look up to her and be absolutely amazed. Keir Starmer, he literally couldn't pick a good apple, could he, out of a pile? You know, the people he's appointed, Tulip Sadiq, currently under investigation for corruption charges. He made her the Minister for Corruption. He didn't think she was actually going to get involved in it herself. You know, what about Louise Haigh, the convicted fraudster? He decided to make her the Secretary of State for Transport. That didn't go too well. What about Sue Gray? Do you remember her? I mean, all the way back to the beginning. She was a woman who was going to transform the way that government's done. She's out the window, out the door, you know, sitting in the House of Lords. What about Lord Alley? Do you remember him? Oh, yeah, he was his great friend, wasn't he, who he got to buy him some spectacles and he got to buy him some suits and he got to use Lord Alley's penthouse in Covent Garden. And even his son went there, apparently, because it was too noisy at home. What with all those fire bombs going off, no doubt. I don't know what's going on. Let's get a voice note from Ben, who's in Prague.
Hi Mike, Ben in Prague here. Just wanted to thank you for the show that reminds me every single morning that leaving that country
was the best decision I'd ever made. Just arrived home, pothole appeared on the roads, was it last week? And we've already got someone there repairing it. I live in a little village as well, not even in the city. And I strongly advise to anyone out there now, take advantage of this European Youth Mobility Scheme. Get the hell out of that country while you can, because that is doomed. There is literally no coming back from the mistakes and disastrous decisions this government are making. I'm just waiting for a time when they figure out a way of taxing me over here. Anyway, good luck to you all. Have a great day. Bye.
Ben, thank you very much indeed. Ben reporting into us from a small village outside of Prague there, says it's a great place to be. Well, it'd be all very fine if you could just go and join up the Youth Mobility Scheme. I'd have to pretend to be an illegal migrant, though, because obviously they would say, well, how do you mean you're the youth? I'd say, well, of course I'm a youth. How old are you? I'm 18, OK? I'm 18. I need to go to Prague to live. What do you think? Do you think it could happen? It's 8:33.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 8:35. Steve in Sussex says this. Mike, please stop talking down Keith Starling and Rachel Thieves. They're doing a great job and a fantastic service to this country. They're ensuring that no Labour government will ever get into power again in mine, my children's and my grandchildren's lifetime. The downside is what state will the country be in, and is it recoverable? Well, that is a very good question, Steve in Sussex, and I'll put it for you to Kevin Hollinrake, MP, Shadow Secretary of State for Levelling Up Housing and Communities. Kevin, very good morning to you.
Morning, mate.
A lot of people saying it's not a very good morning when they read the detail of some of this stuff in the papers this morning. The Daily Mail says a reckless splurge we and our children will be paying for or paying off for years. I don't think any of Rachel Reeves' numbers add up. I'm not sure I believe any of them. The spending that she says she's going to get on with in terms of building houses, in terms of creating jobs, in terms of stopping people staying in hotels if they happen to be illegal migrants. I mean, none of it is anything other than a very sort of vague ambition, isn't it?
I think she's totally in denial. I watched her very carefully yesterday in the House, and she has this kind of glazed look on her face. And against all the obvious facts that are flying around, she seems to think everything's going swimmingly. I mean, she was so fortunate that the spending review was yesterday and not today. To stand up in front of the Commons after claiming constantly you got the fastest growing economy in the G7 when all we saw was actually a spike because of the potential US tariffs. And now we're seeing the economy contracting at 0.3%. What you get stuck in with this, what she has done, talking the economy down for 6 months, then whacking it with £25 billion a year tax rises for business alone, about another 50 billion in tax and borrowing for others, and the red tape coming down the track in terms of businesses who employ people. She's depressed the economy out of all recognition. Business confidence was +5 in June of last year. Today it's -60, according to the Institute of Directors. Right. businesses, their confidence has dropped off a cliff in a way nobody's ever seen before, other than something like COVID. And that's all because of Rachel Reeves' policies and choices.
But the question, as I say, that I read from one of our listeners and viewers just then, you know, how much damage is this going to actually create before it stops? And I mean, that is a question that people are beginning to worry about and ask about. You know, will the economy actually survive this? Will we end up going cap in hand to the IMF like we had to do in 1976? You know, are we actually heading towards that kind of a road?
Well, potentially. I mean, she's stuck now in a doom loop. You know, if you increase taxes to generate revenue, and she knows that growth, she's right to say growth pays for everything, but she's increased taxes, which has depressed growth, which means you get less revenue in because businesses are paying less tax because they're not making as profit, and they're employing fewer people who are also paying less tax. So you have to increase taxes again to make up for what you've lost because of all the spending, particularly that she put in place yesterday. And you have to, so you get this doom loop of tax after tax, which depresses the economy further. And the only end point of that is a recession and potentially going with your begging bowl to somebody else to help to dig you out that mess, as Labour did, as you said, a few decades ago. So it really is not a pretty sight right now. And I've got to say, you've got a Chancellor and a Prime Minister that are totally out their depth.
Yeah, it would seem so. She's been doing the rounds this morning, Rachel Reeves, dressed in black rather appropriately, I think, after the performance yesterday. This is a clip from the BBC. This is when she was asked about asylum hotels and no longer putting migrants in them.
Hotels used for asylum seekers, you've said that will come to an end. Where will those people go, if not to hotels, and what will that cost?
We've said that we will reduce those costs by £1 billion, and we will get people out of those hotels in this Parliament. We have already massively uplifted the number of people who are being deported because we're processing the claims, and we are in this spending review and over the last year have put more money into processing those claims and also into the court system so that when people appeal we can have those cases done quickly and get people out of the country if they have no right to be here. We shouldn't be paying for asylum seekers to be in hotels.
Well, you'll just be paying for them to be in rented accommodation instead. I mean, that's the reality.
Wait a second. Not if we're deporting them, and we have massively stepped up deportations, and that's crucial. But we've also got to stop people coming into the country in the first place illegally, and that's why I invested yesterday.
And those numbers are up. The number of people coming in illegally on small boats are up.
Well, yesterday we put £250 million into the Border Security Command because we do need to take back control of our borders.
You don't know where to begin, really, Kevin. She's sort of deluding herself now, isn't she? I mean, she's saying, well, we're going to put people through the court system, which is already, you know, broken. It doesn't work. You know, you can't get a court case for love nor money within about 2 years. They're not going to ramp up the border security. What they're going to do, according to Angela Eagle, who's a minister in the Home Office, they're going to use old tower blocks and former student accommodation to put these people in, which is also going to cost us money.
Well, it's another doom loop. I mean, the scrap Rwanda, which we had to fight time and time, 132 times they tried to block us in the Lords on Rwanda and in the Commons. And Rwanda was working and it would have worked, but they scrapped it. And that legislation meant we could detain illegal migrants before deportation. Scrapped it. So that's more people now coming to the country because there's no deterrent. So you've seen about 25% uplift to about probably 50,000 people coming over the channel this year. I admit that they're processing asylum seekers more quickly. That means more of those people will be going into rented accommodation, just as the chap on the BBC was saying. Because she says they're deporting people. A tiny fraction of the people deported come on small boats. It's a complete lie. They're trying to con the public, hoodwink the public. The only way you deal with this problem is what we tried to do and put a deterrent in place. And almost even centre ground commentators are now saying this is the only way you can deal with this problem. Other countries are looking at this too. The trouble with Keir Starmer, he's too weak, he's too friendly with the legal profession, all those right-on people in North London who think, oh, it's terrible to have a deterrent, it's terrible to send people to Rwanda. He'd rather come into the country, process them more quickly. They become UK residents. They later remain here permanently. Well, I think we're the soft touch of Europe in terms of this particular problem. And until we get a proper deterrent, this will keep happening and it'll get worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, and I put this to another guest earlier on in the show. It was only a week or so ago that Keir Starmer said the French were going to change their tactics in the Channel. They were going to go into the water, into the shallows, and they were going to arrest people who were trying to get on boats. The Sun this morning has got a front page where they stood and witnessed a whole bunch of migrants clambering onto a dinghy, into several dinghies, and the French police stood by and did absolutely nothing, and actually said, well, we're not going to do anything because once they're in the water, it's too dangerous to try and stop them. So I don't know where Keir Starmer got the idea that they're going to be going into the water, because they're simply not.
Well, no, I was right, and that's not good enough, and we are paying the money to do that, and there's no way that we should be doing that if they're not going to act properly. I understand there was a rise in the number of boats they were stopping when we changed the deal, but it's still not good enough. But have you noticed that Keir Starmer seems to have dropped the phrase "smash the gang"?
Oh, yeah.
Because I've not heard him say that for weeks now, because he knows in his heart that strategy would never work. We've been trying to smash the gangs in the drug sector for decades, of course. It's whack-a-mole. You obviously smash one, another one pops up because it's so lucrative. The only way you can deal with this problem is to have a deterrent. And that deterrent, unpalatable for some that it may sound, is a strategy of deportation, either back to their country or back to a place like Rwanda, which is obviously not why they want to leave their own country in the first place. They want to come to Britain because it's seen as a soft touch. Yeah. I'm sorry, we can't be that for the world. No, we really can't. And I mean, I know the Tories will be getting the blame as well for this because it did happen under the Tory government. But, you know, as you say, you had tried many times. I mean, I was saying this morning, listening to the roars of delight coming from the Labour benches when she's talking about deporting people, these are the same people, presumably, that were trying to stop every single thing that you tried to do. Exactly right. I mean, it is shameless how they've tried to pretend that somehow they're on the side of British people in stopping these people coming over the Channel. And everybody knows. I mean, there's a great piece by Matthew Syed recently in the Times about this, not a right-wing commentator, who concludes, looks at this problem, has gone to Calais for a couple of days, met the people, and very sympathetic to apply to some of those people coming over the Channel, as we all are, but nevertheless, we cannot be the solution to the world's problems. Yeah. And we cannot be that soft touch. The only way you can deal with this is through a deterrent. The only party that I think will try to do this in Parliament was the Conservative Party. We will try again if we can get back in power, and that's what we need to do. Yeah. Kevin Hollingworth, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Shadow Secretary of State for Levelling Up Housing and Communities. Let's get a voice note from Rob.
Why is it that the Human Rights Act can't be invoked against the French government because they're allowing people to get on those boats and risk their lives, leaving a safe country, and especially parents that have children and trying to bring the children with them? You know, that in itself is willfully putting those children at risk, and the French government are allowing them to do that.
Yeah, it's a very good point, Rob. And why, in fact, is the Human Rights Act or the European Convention on Human Rights not used for a great many other things? Like, for example, the right of British people, for example, to be put first in the queue. This from Christine. I know a builder who has been meeting with a well-known supplier of houses, and he told them in February 2025 that he wouldn't have a team available to start until March 2026. The house builder agreed to this, as reliable, experienced construction teams are hard to find. Where is Angela Rayner going to find hers? Down the back of a sofa. Auf Wiedersehen, pet. Let's have a look, actually, at what happened at Prime Minister's Questions yesterday. This was Keir Starmer talking about the Chagos Islands deal.
This morning, we heard that because of his terrible Chagos deal, Mauritius is scrapping income tax. Why on earth should the British taxpayer pay for £30 billion for tax cuts in Mauritius?
Mr. Speaker, Diego Garcia is a vital intelligence and strategic capability. And it's absolutely clear that legal uncertainty would compromise it in very short order. That is why they started the negotiations in relation to it. And no responsible Prime Minister would let that happen. We've secured the base for the long time. That has been welcomed by our allies, by the US, by NATO, by Australia, New Zealand, India. It's been opposed by adversaries, Russia, China and Iran. And in the second column, we add reform, following Putin, and the Tories following reform.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister knows this has nothing to do with national security, but his bad negotiating. I've had the security briefings. It was a bad deal before, and it's still a bad deal.
Kerry Badenoch there, doing quite well yesterday. Of course, Starmer lying once again there by lumping China in with Russia and Iran, who he says were against the Chagos Islands deal. Well, China have welcomed the Chagos Island deal, and they said it very openly 2 weeks ago. And he still continues to lie. Listen to what Peter Hitchens says. You know, if they're doing this time after time after time, and as he says, for the long time, when he should have said the long term, I mean, he's so bad at speaking. The bottom line is that if you actually keep lying to people and you do it deliberately over a period of time, it is, as Peter Hitchens says, propaganda. It means that they know what they're doing, they know they're telling lies, they know the truth is out there, and they're not telling you what it is, because they want you to think that they have power over you. And that's where we're going with this. And that, I have to say, is pretty shameful for any government, for any minister, and certainly for the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. What an absolute shambles. This is Morning Glory.
The great con is upon us. It started with Rishi Sunak when he began to say, I'm fast-tracking numbers of people through the asylum process. Is they're shifting the concern from national government and the Home Office onto local authorities and council tax and council housing and social housing. Yeah. And that is disgraceful. It's dishonest. 30 or 40 or even more. 50% of people who are not British born, but those coming and gaining indefinite leave to remain, because that's what's happening in many districts and towns across the country.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 8:51. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. Doug says this. Good morning, Mike. Please tell me, what does Starmer mean by working people? Every comment, thousands of jobs, looking after the working people, the black hole, fixing the foundations. Why does Labour continue to lie? Well, I think I explained it just now. And David says, I know the Chagos Islands deal should never have happened. I know they are moaning about Mauritius giving their people tax breaks, but you know, if something like that ever happened here in the UK or any other Western country, they would never, ever give anything back to the peasants, would they? You're probably right, David. You can't imagine it happening, could you? Ever get a tax return actually sent back to you? Ever had a tax refund? I don't think I've ever met anyone that's had a tax refund. They used to happen quite a lot, but not now. You don't get them anymore. All you get now is a sort of subsequent demand. I got one for April, apparently underpayment of national insurance, apparently. Oh, yeah, they put it up. But, you know, I don't know why. I got a warning and I had to pay another 300 quid for some reason, which, of course, I had to pay. Otherwise, it was going to become fined at a rate of something like 6 pence a day, whatever it is that they do. Anyway, the HMRC are going to stop sending out letters unless they're demands for money, because apparently that will save them 50 million a year. Let's get a voice note from Marco on house building.
Good morning, Mike. Marco from Swindon here. Listening to that speech yesterday and Rachel from accounts going on about a £39 billion investment into housing, the first thing I thought was most of those houses are going to go to the immigrants anyway. So, yeah, another complete waste of money. Brilliant. Great show, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, that is the problem. They're not going to build that many houses, and the ones they do build are probably going to be used up because of the fact they're moving migrants out of the hotels. It's a sort of zero-sum game, it would seem to me. Let's talk to Alex Crook, though. He's chief football correspondent at talkSPORT, because there's been a lot of flack flying in the world of football since England lost 3-1 to Senegal the other night. There's been all sorts of rows with Real Madrid star Jude Bellingham. Alarm bells is what it says on the back page of The Sun today. Thomas Tuchel, the new manager, tells special boy Jude, don't upset teammates, referees, or my mother. Yesterday, Thomas Tuchel appeared on talkSPORT as well. Alex, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good to see you. Let's have a look at what Tuchel was saying yesterday. He talked about the Senegal loss, first of all. Here he is.
Then maybe we need to get our expectations right. Like, how do we arrive in a match? Like, for example, yesterday they arrived with a clear objective to beat us, to make history. We arrived to win the match, but would we have had the same joy after the match? I don't think so. I include myself. I would have been positive in the feedback, and but I would not have screamed. I would not have put my fist on some boxes from the kid guys to make noise in the dressing room. And they did all this, so you felt like you felt more joy, and you felt more joy and agility in their game yesterday than most of the time than in our game. So it just made me question, do we hold ourselves back in a good meaning? So we set the standards high, we set the demands high, but at a point, do we not also need to accept and respect the quality on the other side and celebrate more, celebrate the goals more, be more happy?
I think you're absolutely right, and he used that word joy a lot during the course of the hour-long interview. When he didn't hold back, actually, in fairness, he didn't dodge any questions, but it was something I observed during the game. One of the real positives from the Gareth Southgate era, whether you think he was a successful England manager or if you think he came up short in the big games, he reunited the England fans with the players, and it did seem that he got the players, rather than feeling the burden of that white jersey, revelling in being England internationals. And slowly but surely, I think that's ebbed away. I saw it in Germany last summer. We actually shared a hotel with some of the England players, and there was an exchange between Jude Bellingham and our own Jim White. Jim White said, "You're doing great, Jude," and he said, "You don't mean that," and then stomped off into a lift. And I thought, well, that's a little bit unnecessary. And it does seem this us against them mentality that Gareth did so well to stamp out has crept in again. I think Thomas Tuchel needs to find a solution to that between now and the World Cup, which is less than a year away now. A year ago yesterday, the first fixture in North America next summer.
And does he have a problem with Jude Bellingham? I mean, or does Jude Bellingham just have a problem with everybody else?
I think he's becoming a problem, and I think it was really interesting that that's the line that all the newspapers have obviously latched onto, the fact that Thomas Tuchel said his own mum finds some of Bellingham's behaviour repulsive. He kicked a water box in frustration at the end of that game. He booted the ball away as well after that defeat against Senegal. There were issues in the camp last summer. He was one of the senior leaders in the dressing room, but wasn't particularly keen to conduct media interviews. I know that didn't go down well with some of the other players. Also, after scoring that overhead kick that kept England in the tournament, He obviously shouted to the camera, "Always me," and I'm told that didn't go down particularly well with his teammates either. So I do think Thomas Tuchel has got to find a way to bring this ego under control. He's clearly one of our generational talents, and you have to build the team around him, but you need to cut out the rest of his game, I think.
Yeah, indeed. Let's have a look at another clip. This is Thomas Tuchel talking about listening to talkSPORT.
One quick question: do you ever listen to talkSPORT?
Yeah, in the car. Like
okay.
When I'm driving from Birmingham to London, it's in the car. When I drive to matches, and I have the luxury that I have people driving me to matches and then bring me back, and drivers always talkSPORT. Only talkSPORT.
Have you got any favourites
on talkSPORT?
Yeah,
U2.
Thank you very much.
He means
by
U2, the band.
Oh, right.
He doesn't mean U2.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, fair enough. He's a very honest guy, isn't he?
Yes, he is. And in some ways, that honesty is refreshing. I'm not sure how well those Bellingham comments will go down with Jude or the Bellingham family, but they're in the public domain now, and it'll be interesting when England next convene. I think the next international break is September. Clearly, he's going to be asked about that, whether Thomas Tuchel backtracks a little bit. But it's one of the hallmarks of his managerial career. He speaks his mind. He's confident in his own ability that he can do that. And he's got some big decisions to make between now and the World Cup. What I also found interesting in that interview, he sort of said this September break would be more about the players that he's going to pick for the tournament itself. He obviously acknowledged that England haven't qualified yet, but they will because they're in a really easy group. They'd probably win every game in qualifying. So I think if you're not in the squad come September, I think the chances of you being on the plane for the World Cup itself are quite slim.
Yeah, absolutely right. Good to talk to you. Alex Crook, thanks very much indeed, Chief Football Correspondent at talkSPORT there with an exclusive interview with Thomas Tuchel, the new German manager of England, who seems to have run into a bit of trouble already. Not just with Jude Bellingham, but with losing matches as well. Coming up in the next hour, Zia Youssef is going to join us, the former chairman, of course, of Reform UK, now head of Doge. We'll find out what he's doing, we'll find out how he's feeling, and we'll find out what he makes of what Rachel Reeves announced yesterday right here on the spending review. Nobody's buying it. I'm certainly not buying it, and neither should you. This is Morning Glory, back after the news.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Well, it is something that shouldn't be said. It is not right. A woman is an adult female, and the court has made that absolutely clear. I actually welcome the judgment because I think it gives real clarity. It allows those that have got to draw up guidance to be really clear about what that guidance should say. If you want to fight for Remain, vote Labour. Now, there are some who say we don't need Brexit to work. We need to reverse it. I couldn't disagree more. Day after day, there are new allegations of sleaze, of favours, of privileged access. And it's all very well the Prime Minister saying, well, say now, well, I'm paying for it.
You've decided to repay £6,000 worth of gifts.
Lord Ali is facing an investigation. I wonder how concerned you are that your biggest donor was not fully transparent.
Are you saying you made a mistake?
It was right for me to make those repayments. Thank you. Of course, I wouldn't want Donald Trump round for dinner, but don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected this time around. I'm anti-Trump. I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Trump on his inauguration as the 47th President of the United States.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, coming up to 3 minutes past 9. This is, of course, the home of common sense. We've been talking it for the last 3 hours. Morning, Mike, says Kate and the Wirral. So the hotels are being phased out by 2028-29. A remarkable coincidence, maybe. That's the same approximate completion date of all the new build houses. Doesn't take a genius to join those dots. Well, of course, the problem is nobody really believes that the Rachel Reeves plan to build 1.5 million houses a year or whatever it is actually going to happen, because there aren't the people to build those houses. There simply aren't the workers to do it. There's not enough skilled workers in this country to build houses at that rate. Ask anyone in the housing business, they'll tell you very clearly. Andy has got a voice note for us on Labour's lies.
How the hell can they get away with these false claims? I mean, I was going to say every day, but it's every hour. You know, turn the radio on, listen to your great show in the morning, and it's something different every single day. Well, one of the cabinet, or Starmer, or Lammy, or that idiot Miliband, it's just all lies. And how long do we have to put up with this? Have we got to put up with this for 4 years with them just gaslighting, lies? Anyway, just my thoughts. Have a great day, mate.
Yeah, great to hear from you, Andy. Thank you very much indeed. People are sick of the lies, and I mean, we do lie of the day here, of course, at Morning Glory. We haven't had one yet from Keir Starmer, because he hasn't actually tweeted anything out this morning. Maybe we've beaten him into submission. Maybe he's going to stop putting these lying tweets out first thing in the morning, usually at about 8 a.m, because he hasn't put one out yet. I'll do you one from last night instead. He put this out at 8:30 last night. I said we would drive the biggest increase in social and affordable housing in a generation. Today we have. No, you haven't. Today, what you've done is you've laid out a load of spending plans that you might do. You've also told us that you're going to be spending £100 billion paying back the interest on a load of borrowing. You know, the borrowing is out of control. Absolutely crazy. Zia Yusuf coming up in this hour, head of Doge, former chairman, of course, of Reform UK. This is Morning Glory. We want to hear from you, because you know it makes sense. This is Talk. Coming up a little bit later in the hour as well, we'll have an appreciation of a Beach Boys legend, Brian Wilson, who passed away, died last night at the age of 82. An incredible influence on so many people. Elton John saying he was the biggest influence he had on his songwriting. But let's now go back to Zia Yusuf, who's here for the first time since he's not been chairman of Reform UK. Zia, welcome back. Very good to see you.
Good morning, Mike.
Nice to see you. Incredible sort of brass neck, I think, is probably the best way to describe Rachel Reeves yesterday. I couldn't make head nor tail of the figures. You know, looking at the analysis this morning in the newspapers, everybody's got a different number for exactly how much money she's actually planning to spend. You know, is it 300 billion? Is it 500 billion? Is it 2 trillion? Is it 4 trillion? I mean, you're a businessman. What do you make of it?
Well, it's funny, because anytime a Reform representative talks about how we want to cut taxes on working people, you get this enormous angry response from the mainstream media demanding to know, how are you going to fund that? And Labour's answer to this is always spank it up, put it on the credit card, right? Yeah. Just whack all of this spending on the credit card. Originally, she said she was going to borrow 87 billion a year. That's now going to be north of 150 billion a year. As you've said, the interest costs alone for this country are 100 billion a year. I do want to caveat this, though, and be really clear. Actually, the majority of that is the result of the drunken sailors in the Tory party. They were the ones who tripled the national debt in their 14 years. So she's promising, like many chancellors before her inside the Uni party, she's promising everybody a larger slice of pie. The NHS gets more pie, the Defence Department gets more pie, and yet the pie is not growing, and the bakers are fleeing the country at a rate that this country has never seen before in its history. So a fiscal reckoning is coming. And to your last caller's point, I could not agree more. People are fuming in this country because you have these grinning Labour cabinet ministers talking about how proud they are and how excited they are about these spending plans and their budget plans. And yet you look at the numbers. Since Rachel Reeves' budget last year, over 250,000 people who are on payrolls are no longer on payrolls. And we are hemorrhaging jobs as a direct result of the increase in national insurance contributions, Mike. And that is a direct result of what happens when people clowns, essentially, with no idea how the world works, occupy the highest offices of the land in this country.
And they're also fed up with hearing these ridiculous claims that they make, like that one I just read out, you know, the lie of the day, as I like to call it.
Yeah.
Keir Starmer says he's done something. When he hasn't done something, what he's done is he's announced that he's going to do something. Well, that's not the same thing, is it?
I'd go a step further. In many cases, it's not just that they haven't done it, they're literally doing the opposite, right? I mean, I saw a tweet this morning from Keir Starmer saying that as a result of the private school VAT on private school fees, he was now building more houses.
Right.
And pretty much universally, everybody's shrugging, somewhat baffled as to what a VAT on private school fees, which is a disastrous policy, by the way, has to do with house building. And let's talk about house building, because I was in a debate with a Labour MP yesterday, and again, they were talking about all this house building. Number one, this country is hemorrhaging construction jobs, again, at a historic speed. So I don't know who they think is actually going to build these houses. Secondly, if you take net immigration, housing generally is a catastrophe in this country. A third of young adults, 20 to 33, are still living at home with their parents. Forget about getting on the housing ladder and buying a home. They can't even afford to rent, in no small part because the demand for houses is off the charts, right? We've had an insane increase in the size of the population and therefore demand in the housing market. This country has struggled to ever get to more than 150,000 new homes a year. That's like a really good year for this country. And even if, and net migration, even last year, and this is definitely going to be revised up, was somewhere, 550,000? And even if you take Labour's house building target, which they're going to get nowhere near for the reasons just discussed, you're still nowhere close to satiating the demand from the people who they are letting in on a daily basis. So not only, Mike, are they not doing the things that they're claiming, i.e. lying, they are literally doing the opposite, and that's why British people are furious with them.
Yeah, and they're projecting as well things like, 10,000 new jobs for building submarines. Not true. They're going to create 30,000 new jobs in the construction industry. Also not true, because people have said to me, look, if you want to build a house, you get people who build houses. That's what they do for a living. When they finish building one house, they go and build another house. That's not a new job, is it?
No, exactly. And look, let's also be really clear. Look, people listening to this programme, they feel like they get poorer every year while these grinning cabinet ministers tell them everything's brilliant. The reality is they are getting poorer. Real wages for British people have done nothing in 10 years, i.e. wages adjusted for inflation. The cost of living is still eye-watering. People are petrified to open their energy bills because they only ever go one way rapidly because of the mad net zero policy. So we have probably the worst cabinet now of our lifetime, and my lord, there is some competition in making that statement. British people are furious. We need real competence back again inside Westminster, which we frankly haven't had in decades.
Yeah, absolutely right. Now, Rachel Reeves is out and about this morning. She's dressed in black, you won't be surprised to know, which is quite appropriate considering what she announced yesterday. She doesn't come to our studio because she doesn't like talking to me for some reason. I can't imagine why. Despite the fact that she claimed that the economy was in good shape just before she made the spending review announcements, it came out this morning that it shrunk by 0.3% in April. Here's what she told the BBC about the shrinking GDP.
The numbers are disappointing, but monthly GDP numbers are particularly volatile. And if you take the 3-month period, the economy grew by 0.7%. I think we also all know that April was a challenging month. It was the month that US tariffs came in, and there was a lot of uncertainty as well. Since then, we've managed to secure 3 trade deals with the US, with India, and with the EU. And of course, yesterday, in the spending review, I set out investment in our key priorities as a country, the priorities of the British people, including investment in affordable housing, in energy, and in local and regional transport projects to bring that growth back to the economy, because weak economic growth has been a challenge in the UK for over a decade now, and I, as Chancellor, am determined to turn around the poor GDP, poor growth numbers, and the poor living standards, because ultimately that's what this is all about. It's about trying to improve the living standards of ordinary working people.
Yeah, it may well be about that, but it's not going very well, is it? I mean, it's just delusional, that, isn't it?
Yeah, she's turning into a parody of herself. Every action she's taking is doing precisely the opposite of getting the economy growing again. Let's go back to that £100 billion in interest payments that now this government is going to be paying of taxpayers' money. That is more than the defence and education budgets combined, and that number is going only one way. We haven't talked about the fact that the cost of borrowing for the British government, 10-year gilts, is now higher than it was under the Liz Truss regime. So again, that part is a total disaster. I go back to the point too about jobs. Anyone who's ever run a business, had an important role where you actually have to make hiring and firing decisions, and especially entrepreneurs. I was an entrepreneur, so I understand this. When you're thinking about payroll, when she decided to ramp national insurance contributions for employers by 2%, and then had the gall to claim that it wasn't, quote, a tax on working people. The only reason that that's technically true is all it's resulted in is employers laying people off, or in some cases, entire businesses. I've spoken to hospitality business owners who are shutting their whole business down because they were operating on wafer-thin margins, and that hike has tilted them over the edge. Again, it's what happens when you have people. Look, she might have done a good, solid job in the complaints department at Halifax. She's totally out of her depth as Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about that. Do you think she's going to last until the autumn when she wants to then try and put taxes on us?
I think what we're going to see is continued basically no growth. I mean, celebrating 0.7% growth. Here's the point, Mike. The only reason that's happening is the population keeps growing. The population is still growing faster than that 0.7%, which is why GDP per capita, economic output per person, is still going down. So I don't think she's going to last. I worry, though, that if you look at the bench of talent to replace her, and it's the same story with Keir Starmer under Labour, we'll end up with something even more abominable.
Yeah. Let's have a look at Mel Stride. He was speaking to me early this morning, and he was giving his view on Rachel Reeves.
What you've got to look at when you look at this spending review is where is the money coming from and can we afford it? And where the money is coming from are these eye-watering taxes that this government is dishing out left, right and centre that has been killing growth, strangling businesses, and also borrowing, of course, borrowing vast amounts of money. Can we afford it? Well, it's looking increasingly dicey to me. We've seen a government that through destroying growth, through stoking inflation, getting interest rates higher than they would otherwise be, adding to this huge mound of national debt, the servicing costs on which incidentally are 100 billion a year in interest alone. That's twice what we spend on defence. You're really seeing a government that's losing control of the public finances, I'm afraid. And I think it means in the autumn we could be in for some really further difficult news with some tax rises.
I mean, it was interesting watching Rachel Reeves yesterday because you must have been pleased at Reform because she gave you quite a few name checks, didn't she? Obviously the Tories are going to have a go back at her, but, you punch well above your weight in terms of how much they worry about you.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at Keir Starmer channeling his Enoch Powell, right? When he talked about an island, he suddenly starts saying this country is becoming an island of strangers, having just a few years ago said that anyone who raises concerns about immigration is racist. He's done a complete volte-face, which is why nobody believes him. They're U-turning on the winter fuel payment, which I actually think is going to make their poll ratings go down even more because it demonstrably proves that the decision to cruelly take away the winter fuel allowance from British pensioners who are paid into the system their whole lives to save a fraction of the amount they spend, for example, on asylum hotels, was not necessary, was not because of some imaginary black hole. I will just make the point, though, about the Tories. I mean, regardless of what they say now, all this Labour government is what the Tories were doing, only faster. And actually on the debt side, not even that, frankly, not even that. The Tories spent money like drunken sailors. They tripled the national debt. Under Boris Johnson, public spending as a percentage of GDP hit levels almost Soviet Union levels. And even that 100 billion of debt payments, to be fair to Rachel Reeves, which is a phrase I never thought I'd say, the majority of that, the people responsible, were the Tory party of which Mel Stride is a part.
And let's talk about your new role, the head of Doge. I mean, you were doing it sort of as well as being chairman in the past, but how's that going now that you're back sort of at it? What have you found? What are you uncovering this week?
Well, one thing I realised, and we went up to see Kent County Council for that sort of first meeting. I've been assembling an all-star team of patriots, software engineers, data analysts, forensic auditors, all working pro bono. And I realised this is an absolutely gargantuan task and an unbelievably important project because, look, the national budget is £1.2 trillion. There is an enormous amount of money that is being wasted, in some cases stolen. And we are going to fight for taxpayers who I think have been taken for mugs for too long. We are going, in terms of what we found, well, look, let's look at the £2.8 million of fraud that Kent County Council have already admitted to. That wasn't something that we uncovered per se, but we're putting it out there as a demonstration of what's happening. That £2.8 million, the vast majority of that fraud was inside these mandatory statutory budgets that we keep being told, don't bother even looking there. There's nothing to be saved. It's mandatory. Well, this money was stolen. It was taxi firms invoicing for trips that never happened to take SEND kids to school because there's no scrutiny. Then there were adult social care firms, Mike, invoicing for care of people who had long since deceased. Again, no proper scrutiny. Employees who had long since left. There's been a lot of snouts in the trough, and I can tell you in the coming days, and hopefully I can come on the show again in the next few days to talk about it, some quite explosive things that we found councils spending money on. You know, you can try taking asylum seekers and illegal migrants trampolining as an example. I mean, it's just things that are taxpayers are going to be absolutely furious about. So there's things like that. We're also going to use these cutting edge tools to do a thorough analysis of things like procurement. And that might sound boring, but it's actually really crucial. I was looking at a contract worth north of £3 million at one of these councils yesterday for taxi service to take SEND kids to school. Over £3 million a year for a local taxi firm, where that's almost all of their revenue. Do you know how many bidders there were in that procurement process? One. I put it to you, the last time you went to the airport, you probably got 2 quotes for a taxi, right? And this is the case writ large.
No, I know. This has been a racket for years. When I worked in Scotland, I used to look into what was going on at Edinburgh Council, and they were doing exactly the same thing. And it was one company that had the entire budget. And I mean, in some points, you couldn't get a taxi at Edinburgh in the morning because they were all taking school kids to school. Yeah. And by the way, in some cases, we've got people coming forward saying, look, someone's got 3 SEND kids and 3 different taxis turn up to take them to the same school. I mean, so there is enormous amounts of waste. There is corruption. We've got to stop also these huge consulting firms. There's a council that paid PwC £6.2 million to, quote, identify ways they could save money. I mean, you couldn't make this up. I thought it was a parody when I first saw it. These big consulting firms and these accounting firms have taken £8.5 billion worth of contracts from the British government over the last 5 years. And that's while civil servants' jobs keep going through the roof. You know, it continues to expand. Someone needs to stand up for taxpayers who are being taken for mugs. And I'm telling you, this Doge, it's really a movement that we're building. We're bringing the brightest and best. We're going to launch a whistleblower. We've already had so many whistleblowers coming forward because people can finally see there are people who can't be bought, who care deeply about this issue and are going to put it on the front pages of newspapers. And then as we win even more elections in the coming years, wield the political power and will necessary, as I said, to make sure British taxpayers' money is spent the way people would spend their own. OK. Nathaniel Fried left when you left the other day. Is he coming back as well? Well, he's continuing to do a lot of great work for us, and we've got a load of other people. I mean, I'm really excited to showcase more people who are working, but, you know, we've already got 12 people in the team, and it's growing all the time. OK. And one final one. David Bull, your successor, came out the other day and said that immigration was the lifeblood of the nation. A lot of people thought that wasn't the greatest start to his career as chairman of Reform. What did you think of it? Immigration. Dr. David Bull is a phenomenal man, and he's going to do an unbelievable job as chair. And if you listen to the full sentence, you understand what he was saying, even if that particular turn of phrase wasn't ideal. This is not an island. It never has been. It's very different to America. It's not been an island of immigrants. And I say that as someone who's the son of immigrants myself. My parents given over half a century of service to the NHS. So I do know the invaluable contribution immigrants have made in can make. But that does not mean this is an island of immigrants. It doesn't mean that diversity is our strength. You remember when Rishi Sunak, a Conservative Prime Minister, held up that coin saying diversity? It's all nonsense. It's really divisive. And I think we've got to get real. We've got to deport people who are here illegally. Mike, we've got to restore the social contract. The country's borders have been overrun. British culture is being overwhelmed. And by the way, even if you speak to many legal migrants in this country, they will tell you the same thing. We've got to stand up for British people, and the only party that are going to do that is Reform. Dear Yusuf, great to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. We'll see you again soon. Head of Doge at Reform UK, former chairman, of course, as well. Morning, Mike, says Tony in Sussex. Rachel Thieves is stating the migrants will be out of hotels by 2029. 4 years, just before they get thrown out of government. So it's all talk just for the sake of it. And they are delusional to think we believe them. The only thing we have to look forward to in 2029 in this pathetic government is that it will be gone forever. Yeah, I think that's something definitely to look forward to. But maybe Thieves and Stalin will be out of a job even sooner. 9:22.
They banned Rwanda. They said they need to find alternative. They've done nothing about it, and now they're saying 2029. From smash the boats to let them all in, and let's let fly with more borrowing, more tax. She is the Klarna Chancellor, Jeremy, because it's spend now, pay later.
Three payments, Klarna Reeves. I like that. That's a new name.
She's just spend. And if only it was for a purpose.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 9:25. I'm Mike Graham. Julie Hartley-Brewer will be here in just over half an hour's time to take you through the next 3 hours from 10 until 1. We have entered practically the final half hour of the show this Thursday. It's going to be Friday, of course, tomorrow, coming up with some gaffes. I'm afraid we will have a few collected over the course of the week when some of our colleagues have done things which perhaps they shouldn't have. We've got loads more to do, lots more to talk about, of course, between now and then. Morning, Mike, says Ernie. Let's see the thousands of migrants getting on the planes Rachel said her government have deported. I don't believe a word of it. GB says, Rachel to her husband this morning, reading the newspapers over the cornflakes. Honey, guess what? I shrunk the economy. Yeah, very good. Well, she's going to shrink it even more by pursuing the crazed net zero policies. We're going to talk now to Andrew Montfort, Director of Net Zero Watch. Andrew, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
Good to see you. Let's have a quick look at what Rachel Reeves said about net zero. It's one of the few areas of government spending which is actually going up.
My second fiscal rule enables me to invest in Britain's economic renewal while getting public debt down on a downward path. The rule has allowed me to increase public investment by over £100 billion in the autumn and a further £13 billion in the spring. Investment to rebuild our transport networks, to rebuild our defence capability and to rebuild our energy security. In short, to grow our economy.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's just shrunk. So the idea of growing it seems to have gone out the window. It's shrunk by 0.3% in April, and I think it's just going to get worse. Andrew, they're still hanging on like grim death to this idea that net zero is going to renew Britain, and we're suddenly going to be, waking up one morning to a brand new world, which is going to be beautiful and full of butterflies and, blue, clear skies and lovely, lovely water. I mean, what's she talking about?
Yeah, I mean, it's like the old story, isn't it? About the madness is when you keep doing the same thing again and again, even when it's making things worse. Net zero has been making things worse, and clearly they are going to carry on with it. I think there has been a bit of a battle we hear behind the scenes between Rachel Reeves and Ed Miliband, and if you like the mad side of the party, the net zero extremists, and if you like the pragmatists, and Ed Miliband and the crazy net zero people have won out, and so all the expenditure he wanted he has got. You and I both know it's going to be wasted. I was very interested in all this money that they're going to spend on transport, green transport. Doing things like buying electric buses. Now, electric buses are astonishingly expensive.
Yeah, they must be.
They're something like £250,000 more expensive for an electric bus than a diesel one.
Right.
So they're essentially going to splurge money on these electric buses. And what is going to happen when the money runs out? When the money runs out, all the bus companies are going to have to either put their prices up through the roof to fund it, or they'll go back to diesel buses.
Yes.
I mean, this is just
And you know what nobody takes any account of is the weight of an electric bus. Because, I mean, people talk about the weight of electric cars, and I've always been convinced by this, that the reason our potholes are so much worse in this country now are because people are now driving around in more electric vehicles, which are astonishingly heavy.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's electric vehicles, it's probably SUVs as well. But yeah, it's funny, that's an interesting point. I've never looked at the weight of an electric bus. I don't think they have more wheels than the old-fashioned kind, so the weight is the pressure on the road surface is going to be even higher, isn't it? So yeah, I wouldn't be at all surprised if they're not damaging the roads more. But of course, you know, the other thing is there's no money left, so nobody's repairing the potholes anyway.
No, they haven't got money for that. But so, I mean, they're going to crack on with their plans for decarbonising the economy. They're going to crack on with their plans for no more exploration of oil and gas in the North Sea. Presumably, they're going to still try and build as many wind farms and solar farms as they possibly can. But again, they talk about investment, but it's not really investment. It's taxpayers' money they're spending, or money they've borrowed that they're spending.
Yeah, or it's consumer money. I mean, it is just eco-posturing, if you like. They're spending money because that's what their base expects them to do. And you know, eventually, you know, the price will have to be paid, and everything will fall apart. I mean, we are running out of money quite quickly. And you know, eventually they're just not going to be able to do this anymore. The question is, how quickly can we get these crazy people out of power? Because they are doing so much damage to the economy. I mean, by 2029, are we going to have a North Sea oil and gas industry left? I doubt it.
Probably not, no. I've been told it's 12,500 kilograms is the weight of an electric bus, which is apparently 13.779 tonnes. It's quite heavy, isn't it?
It is absolutely extraordinary, yeah. And I'm sure most of the roads in this country are not engineered to deal with those sort of weights going over them on a regular basis. I mean, you know, you can imagine you get exceptional loads like that, but yeah, these are big, heavy buses.
Yeah.
It's another problem sort of looming on the horizon. Ed Miliband doesn't care about them, does he?
He doesn't know, because he still thinks that he's onto some kind of a winner, and that he's obviously got some sort of zealotry guiding him, because he knows it must be the right thing to do, even though nobody else is doing it.
Yeah, and he has got the support, I think, of a very large chunk of the parliamentary party. But I was interested earlier this week. We had the first Labour MP standing up and saying, this net zero stuff, you know, really damaging for jobs. Maybe we should take another look at it. That's really unusual. I mean, the Labour has been absolutely in lockstep on that. There's almost no Labour MPs who would be counted as net zero skeptics. If there are Labour backbenchers starting to get nervous about this, and they should be, because I think if they carry on down this road, they are going to get wiped out at the next.
Well, I think like a lot of conversations about immigration, you know, they're probably finding that when they do go back to their constituencies, if they do talk to the people that voted them in, they will say more and more that they want net zero to be curtailed because it's going to cost too much money.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you were talking earlier, weren't you, about Rachel Reeves, you know, it might be the end of her political career. Yeah. I think Labour MPs actually need to sit down and think about whether any of them are going to have any further political careers after this parliament, because you know, things are getting so bad and the decisions are so crazy and so contrary to the interests of the British people that I think the electorate are going to turn on them in the same way that they've turned on the Conservative Party, frankly. And you know, there will be a wipeout of the traditional parties. I think that is a real possibility. And frankly, in the case of Labour, I think it's thoroughly deserved.
Yeah, absolutely long overdue, I think. You're absolutely right. Andrew, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Andrew Montford, Director of Net Zero Watch. Diana in London says, don't Starmer and Reeves realise by continuously lying and being caught out lying, you lose trust. They have lost the trust of the hard-working tax-paying people. They are a laughingstock who think gaslighting us with irresponsible plans demonstrates that they are in control. They are not. And Lorraine says, on the economy, I note The Guardian is blaming Trump for the economy shrinking. When will these idiots stop gaslighting the nation and accept that lying Labour is not fit to govern? Well, exactly right. I mean, of course they're going to blame Trump. That's what, in fact, old Rachel Reeves tried to do when she was talking to the BBC. You know, April was a difficult month because of all the tariffs that were placed on us. No, it was a difficult month because of all the tariffs that were placed on us by the government, particularly national insurance tax rises, which put an awful lot of people out of business and made sure that an awful lot of other people didn't have a job anymore. Congratulations. Let's get a voice note from Mark.
Morning, Mike. It's Mark in Lancashire. Well, we all know where the asylum seekers that are currently living in the hotels, where they're going to go. They're going to give them indefinite leave to remain, approve the refugee status, then they'll put them in all these new social homes they're building, which are on housing estates all over the country. But they're not going to tell you that, because when you go to one of these estates looking at buying a house, you're obviously going to be concerned about your neighbours. They're not going to tell you that you could possibly have six of these unidentified male invaders next door to you that have come across on the channel. They could be a risk to your children, they could be anything. So you could be paying 350, 400 grand for a brand new house for what you think is in a safe housing estate to get a load of, well, basically who knows what next door. So they're not going to tell us this because the developers need to sell the houses, and if they don't sell the houses, then the whole thing falls down. So if I was a young family, then I'd be looking at buying a house on an established street, not one of these new estates, because you could be in trouble.
Yeah, it's an interesting point that you make, and a lot of people will be saying that. Mind you, the housing market's pretty soft at the moment, so not that many people are buying houses because they can't afford the stamp duty. Because thanks to this government, they've increased that by a factor of practically twice as much as well. Instead of paying stamp duty on properties over 500,000, they've reduced it down to 300,000, which for a lot of people in the southeast means it catches all the ordinary working people who are just trying to start out and get a new house for the first time. Absolutely shocking. Mark says this in Norfolk: bloody good luck to Zia Yusuf and reform. When I pick my wife up from her exam invigilating duties, I can't move for taxis. In a small town secondary school, there must be 30 taxis. It is a racket. And Alan from Peterborough says, listening to Zia Yusuf, I'm so glad he's back with reform. He is such an asset to the party. Have a nice day. Well, you too, Alan. Coming up, Steve Daniels is going to join us from Virgin Radio with an appreciation of Brian Wilson, the Beach Boy, the creator of the Beach Boys, who died yesterday, aged 82.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 9:38. I'm Mike Graham with you, of course, for another 20 minutes or so. Julie Hartley-Brewer here at the top of the hour, taking you through from 10 until 1. I'm delighted to say, though, we're joined now by Steve Daniel from Virgin Radio. Steve, lovely to see you.
Good morning, Mike.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. A sad story to tell this morning. Brian Wilson, the sad news broke last night. He died at the age of 82. The founder of the Beach Boys, the kind of the genius behind the Beach Boys, really. Somebody that I think everybody since last night in the music business has had something good to say about him.
Yeah, an amazing figure, a man that probably led 8 different lives within his 82 years.
Yeah.
You know, so much happened, but it seemingly is a little boy that was kind of quite controlled by his father, was given kind of musical instruments as a kid. He was deaf in one ear.
Right.
He was unable to read music. He used to think of music notes as colours, apparently, and yet went on to create the most amazing songs. And, you know, I was speaking to my dad last night. My dad's been a lifelong fan of the Beach Boys. We grew up, family days. My dad had one cassette, and we used to listen to all the Beach Boys songs.
Well, it's one of those things that is, as a father and as not so much as a child, but certainly you would listen, just in the summer, you would just get in the car and you put the Beach Boys on.
Yes.
Because you go, no, it must be summer.
So some amazing facts. He'd never surfed before.
Wow.
And yet he provided the soundtrack.
Right.
You know, you have to remember when these songs came out, we couldn't hop on a plane and go to California.
No.
So it was the California dream.
It's kind of romantic, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And he created that
Surfing
sound.
USA.
There's so many of those Good Vibrations. God Only Knows, which is probably my favourite song of all time.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
probably.
Yeah.
He managed to write in under an hour.
Yeah.
Just kind of like a conveyor belt of the most perfect pop songs. You know, he listened to the Beatles. He was inspired.
Well, there was a bit of rivalry there, wasn't there? Because the Beatles used to listen to I think Pet Sounds when it came out, the album.
That's right.
The Beatles were going, how do they make this sound like this?
Yeah.
How do they do that?
They were both kind of up against each other.
And then suddenly, you know, Brian Wilson would hear a Beatles album and go, oh, that's getting so good. I don't think we can beat that. I mean, it's quite an interesting little rivalry. I mean, I don't know if they ever met up or played together, did they?
You know, as far as I could tell, I think they met. They never played together.
Right.
They certainly never contributed. As far as I tried to look at that earlier. The Beach Boys themselves gave a really, really great kind of tribute, basically saying that, you know, the melodies he dreamed up and the emotions he poured into every note changed the course of music forever. And they called him an unparalleled talent. I mean, Sir Elton John said he is the reason, he's in music, the biggest influence.
And his inspiration
of his lifetime.
for
Bob Dylan as well.
And very simple music as well, wasn't it? I mean, it wasn't complicated.
No, I think that's what it makes why it's so special. They were almost the perfect pop songs, weren't there?
They were.
There was a great movie a couple of years, like a biopic about his life. It's called Love and Mercy, that looks into, because it's a very dark side to his life.
Yeah, I remember reading a really interesting piece. I think it was in Rolling Stone magazine or something, when he was having his kind of sort of strange period, and he had this doctor, didn't he, who sort of stayed with him and kind of looked after him and gave him all sorts of kind of primal scream therapy and stuff like that. And he lived in a sandbox, didn't he?
Exactly that, with a piano.
He had one made in his house. It was just like the beach in his house.
And it took him 30 years to make this album that was only kind of released in drips and drabs. That therapist was actually kind of struck off because she seemingly became his manager and ended up in his will. So he ended up in latter years under a family kind of conservatorship where they were looking after him. So all intents and purposes, when his Alzheimer's got really bad, he was just kind of on his own. If you remember, he played the Queen's Jubilee concert at the beginning of the millennium. And it was evident, I mean, it's still a brilliant performer, but it was quite evident that the drink, the drugs, the mental illness that he was suffering from was taking its toll. But yet could still go out on stage up until within the last 20 years and absolutely smash it, you know.
Because the pictures in the papers today, in the Sun have got a big spread written by Simon Cousins. They look so clean cut, but in fact, you know, the Californian lifestyle was probably like that in the early 60s, late 50s, but then, as you say, it became something slightly darker, didn't it, when the drugs kicked in and all that?
I think there'll be documentaries about him. He suffered from quite an abusive relationship with his father. That led into problems with substances, mental illness on top of that. He had a very, very troubled life, and yet we're met with these brilliant pop songs. Chris Evans played 6 Beach Boys songs out at the 8 o'clock news this morning, and the sun is shining, the songs sounded amazing. They're songs full of positivity, joy, California beaches, and they've really left the mark.
It's one of those things. I mean, again, it's a bit for me. I don't know whether it's the same for other people, but for me, it's a bit like, you know, you only drink rum when you're in the Caribbean. You only listen to the Beach Boys in the summer. I don't listen to them in the winter.
Absolutely,
because it doesn't seem right.
Maybe we should.
Maybe we should sort of get rid of the seasonally affected disorder.
Exactly
but,
that.
You know, an incredible talent, and I mean, I suppose many people. Paul McCartney would have known him quite well. Ronnie Wood was very fulsome in his tribute to him, wasn't he?
Yes, Bob Dylan.
Even Bob Dylan, yeah.
Admired him for years. I mean, these tributes are these are what you would want to be left with, you know, after you pass away.
Yeah.
Belinda Carlisle, who I know.
Yeah.
I spoke to her last night. She said her heart's broken. She said part of my childhood is gone. She knows his daughters, who went on to create a band called Wilson Phillips.
Oh yes, of
at
course.
the beginning of the 90s. And I know Carney. We've worked together in the past. So thoughts, sympathies. It was a long kind of end to his life with quite severe illness. So I know the family are devastated. Probably also quite relieved, because it's never fun, is it, seeing a relative?
No, of course. Yeah, an incredible life, an incredible individual as well, an incredible talent, really. Brian Wilson, dead yesterday at the age of 82. Steve Denyer, thank you very much indeed. When are you back on the air tomorrow morning?
Yes, on Virgin Radio Plus this afternoon, tomorrow morning, It's all go at the moment.
Never stops, does it?
I love it.
Great, we'll see you soon. Thank you very much indeed. Steve Denyer. It's 9:44.
Some breaking news this morning revealed that under the Terrorist Act, 242 people were arrested in the year to June of this year.
That's something you can indulge in as to all the people who aren't going to prison because, well, there's no prison spaces.
So this is a Talk exclusive we've been looking at.
I said, you take these cuffs off me and speak to me like a human being rather than a common criminal.
You're just left wondering, does these people who lead us actually hate Britain? Yeah. Do they not love our country and everything that we've stood for?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 9:47. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until, of course, 10 o'clock. It's about 10 more minutes, basically. Mike says, Jim, good morning. James from sunny Glasgow. Tell me, Mike, why do you broadcasters not ask Labour MPs or Starmer straight? Why does the Royal Navy not patrol the channel and intercept and turn the boats around? Simple. The gangs and illegal immigrants will get the message. Do not try to get into the UK. Well, the thing is, we did try all that. I mean, we had the Navy in the channel when the Tories were in power, and they didn't seem to do anything. I think they spent one summer there, didn't stop any boats, and in fact, if anything, I think they ended up helping more people to get here. Because apparently they have this rule of the sea that you have to rescue people if they appear to be in difficulties, even if they're coming here for a sort of ne'er-do-well purpose. And John says this. Also, the other reason I don't ask Keir Starmer is because he doesn't come on the show. And neither do very many Labour MPs either. I'd have a lot more respect for Keir and Rachel if they stood up and said, give us this parliamentary term to turn things around. If we haven't got better growth and things in general are improving, we will both stand down. Be honest, tell it as it is, and accept you've got a huge majority to pass all the necessary measures, and if things are still bad in 4 years, fall on your sword. What, you mean you're asking politicians to be honourable, John? That's a bit of a stretch, isn't it? Let's talk to Anthony in Southend. He wants to talk about nuclear waste, I think. Anthony, very good morning to you.
Oh, good morning. Yeah, I was interested to see Rachel from Accounts yesterday talking about building new nuclear plants and Rolls-Royce building small modular nuclear reactors.
Yes.
Now, I can't remember how many years ago it was when everybody was coming down on not building nuclear plants because we had to get rid of the waste, and how terrible it was to have this waste buried in places in Scotland, and it was going to take 250,000 years before it was safe. And there was so much negativity about nuclear reactors that it looked like it banged it. Now, we have them. Suddenly, we're going to put a nuclear reactor in. We've already built one. We're going to use the same drawings for the next one to make it cheaper. And nobody's talking about what they're going to do with the waste.
No.
I am for nuclear power. I'm not against it. But it's amazing how it. I find that incredible.
It is incredible, because I think it was Nick Clegg, wasn't it, who was mostly against the nuclear or the expansion of nuclear power, because he boasted about it, didn't he? Back in, I think, 2010. I mean, in that, I guess 2011, around then, because he said because it will take 10 years to build it, and I'm very glad that I didn't have them do it. Well, if they had done it, that we would have had them nuclear powered 5 years ago.
Well, you and I are going to be dead by the time they've got this other nuclear building put together. We won't be around. And there's so much into the future. It just... I get... I'm beside myself with trying to understand what they're talking about. I'm not a very intelligent bloke. I can put a few words together. But you look at them, you think, can't you see what you're doing?
Yeah.
One more point I want to make. When I was looking at Rachel from Accounts yesterday, I was listening to what she said. I didn't understand much of what she said, and I don't think anybody else did.
I don't think she did either.
Starmer's face. I was looking at Starmer's face.
Yeah.
And there was something wrong with his face. It didn't look right in the context of what was going on.
Yeah.
And then when the leader of the opposition came up and started blastering her away with all the things she said, she's writing notes.
Right.
She didn't even have the good grace to look at him and listening.
Yeah.
And you think she's writing notes because she can't bear what she's hearing.
Yeah, I think that's
Anyway,
right.
great,
and she
great,
can't.
great.
Thank you very much indeed. Good to hear from you, Anthony. Thanks very much indeed, Anthony in Southend. Good question that about the nuclear waste. I don't think anybody's actually brought it up. Nobody's asked it. So we'll ask it next time we get somebody on to talk about that sort of stuff. I mean, what are they going to do with the nuclear waste? Let's get a voice note from Joanne.
Morning, Mike. Joanne from Norfolk. Why is it that we have people running the biggest budget in this country who have no background, no experience, no knowledge? But for government, it seems to be a prerequisite. The less experience you've got, the better. You wouldn't have this in any of the biggest companies in this country. They wouldn't put up with that. Yet there's no checks and balances. No one's calling them out. The ONS aren't saying anything. The budget of responsibility aren't saying anything. I mean, it's ridiculous. But yet we have this from one government to the next. These stooges put in place without any clue of what they're doing, and we all have to just sit there and take it. It's just mad.
It is. I don't think in any other business would you accept it, would you? I mean, if you hired an accountant and the accountant comes in and goes, I've never actually done this before, but I'm going to have a good crack at it, you know. I'll see what I can get off the tax people for you. Just give me all your details and I'll do your accounts for you. You wouldn't give the job to him. Or how about a lawyer? Lawyer comes in. I need a lawyer. You know, I've got a court case coming up. I've decided that I'm going to challenge the, the speeding fine that I got, and I'm going to go take you into court with me, and you're going to defend me. And he goes, yeah, fine, but I've never done it before. You'd go, maybe I'll find somebody that actually has done it before. You know, I'm afraid, unfortunately, Rachel Reeves hasn't done anything that's prepared her for this particular job. According to Julie in West Sussex, she says, listen to what Rachel from Accounts said to the BBC. Only makes me wonder whether she spent all night last night memorising that load of absolute rubbish, because it obviously was very well rehearsed. Well, we can have a look at it, because, of course, as we said, she didn't talk to us this morning. They don't like coming into this building, and certainly not into this studio at Talk. But here's what she said about the asylum hotels on the BBC.
Hotels used for asylum seekers
You said that that will come to an end. Where will those people go, if not to hotels, and what will that cost?
Well, we've said that we will reduce those costs by £1 billion, and we will get people out of those hotels in this Parliament. We have already massively uplifted the number of people who are being deported because we're processing the claims, and we are in this spending review and over the last year have put more money into processing those claims and also into the court system, so that when people appeal we can have those cases done quickly and get people out of the country if they have no right to be here. We shouldn't be paying for asylum seekers to be in hotels.
Well, you'll just be paying for them to be in rented accommodation instead. I mean,
well, not if we're
that's the
deporting
reality.
them. Wait a second. Not if we're deporting them, and we have massively stepped up deportations, and that's crucial. But we've also got to stop people coming into the country in the first place illegally, and that's why I invested yesterday.
And those numbers are up. The number of people coming in illegally on small boats are up.
Well, yesterday we put £250 million into the Border Security Command because we do need to take back control of our borders.
Sorry. Yeah, we do need to take back control of our borders. And yeah, so the figures are these, right? They keep saying, oh, but we've deported loads of people already, more people than the Tories ever deported. See that number there, 38,054? That's the migrant tracker, which tells us how bad things are. That's so far, I think, since Labour have been in last July. So in about a year, 38,000, right? That is going to rise. That is going to get higher and higher and higher. She says we've got to stop them. She doesn't say how. She also says that we're going to deport a load of people, right? But up to now, they've deported something like 24,000 people, only 2,000 of whom were illegal migrants. Most of the people they deported were, in fact, people who wanted to go back to their own countries. And many of them were paid to go back to their own countries. And so when they keep saying we've deported all these people, well, that's not true either. Let's have a look at what Jeremy Kyle got out of James Murray yesterday. James Murray, of course, is the Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury. He is the sort of, not quite number 2, but maybe number 3 guy in the Chancellor of the Exchequer's office. Jeremy Kyle asked him, where are all these asylum-seeking migrants, the illegal migrants, going to go if you're shutting down the hotels?
What is your plan? How are you going to stop the boats? How are you going to... OK, stop. Let me have my point. Answer 2 really simple questions very simply. Where are these asylum seekers going? It's a simple question. And what's your plan to stop them coming here in the first place? That's what people want, James. Where are they going?
Well, some of them will be sent home if their applications are rejected, and we want to bring down that backlog. That's the first duty, and that's what we've been doing since the election last year. And what we're saying is, for those people who are being processed, they're waiting for a decision to be taken. It is unacceptable to be spending so much money on expensive hotel accommodation.
So where are they going to go? For not the some who get deported. What about the not some who are going to still be here or are not going in hotels? It's not a difficult question, James, with respect. Where are these people going?
I said earlier on in our conversation today that there would have to be alternative accommodation for them.
He says, alternative accommodation, which will probably come in the form of private dwellings, one would imagine, rented properties, which have either been built by the government specifically for the illegal migrants, or indeed properties that they've acquired through various methods like using Serco and others. Bit of breaking news here just before the top of the hour. An Air India passenger plane carrying up to 242 people was heading for the United Kingdom, crashes in a fireball near Ahmedabad Airport. We'll bring you obviously more on that as we see it, as we hear it, and as it goes on. Here's a voice note from Dave.
Hello, talkTV. Good morning, Mike. Great show. Very informative over the political realms and all that. Beach Boys, Brian Wilson, what a legend. Great Beach Boys. First went to California in '75. Father took us out there. Some of my friends lived up in Pacific Palisades, right across the road from one of their family homes. His dad used to beat them up. He did. He used to kick their ass into the studio and make sure they got every note right. It was quite like that, I heard. Some friends used to know that lot. Rock and roll, Beach Boys. R.I.P.
Thank you very much indeed, Dave, for that. Gary says, Mike, if I understand this deal over Gibraltar correctly, if I fly into Gib on my UK passport, it will be checked by Spanish immigration, but I can then cross into Spain and back into Gibraltar without having to show my passport again. So can anybody explain how the Spanish authorities are now going to enforce the no more than 90 days in any 180 days rule if there is no record of when I go in and out of Spain? I could fly to Gibraltar, cross into Spain, spend the winter months in my holiday home, then fly back out of Gibraltar without the Spanish authorities even knowing that I've ever been in their country. Either nobody's realised that this is now a backdoor into the EU for Brits who want to spend long periods there, or somewhere in the detail of this deal there's a clause that says that time spent in Gibraltar is now going to be counted as time spent in the EU. I think that's probably the case, the latter. I don't know. Julie Hartley-Brewer, very good.
That is a very, very good point.
Isn't
I know
it?
a lot of people would be interested in that.
Yeah. I think we may have to go on a mission and
you mean
find
the government
out.
might not have thought something through?
It's possible. It's possible.
Mike.
I mean, I don't know.
Michael Graham,
There
how
could be,
very dare you?
Could be a loophole, Mr. Labby. You know. Meanwhile, there's
Well, it's a
another.
loophole for all their mates with their little villas in Tuscany.
Yes.